Chris, welcome to Locked In, man.
Hey, thank you, sir. Yeah.
Yeah, pleasure having you here. Thanks for watching the show, supporting it, and asking to be a guest on, man. It's great to have you.
All right, thank you.
Now, you came from New York City today?
Yeah, I'm in New York City.
Is that where you live now?
I live in Central Florida.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, so we flew up, and me and my partner, she has friends here. She's from Jersey originally, like near Trenton.
Yeah.
And we're making it like a mini trip / seeing Ian Bick type thing. You know
She didn't want
to
come and watch?
No, she's like doing stuff with my kids in the city, doing kid stuff.
Oh, your kids came too?
Yeah, brought the whole family.
How old are your kids?
I got a 6-month-old and a 4-year-old.
That's so nice, man. What are you guys doing in the city?
Tourist stuff. I've been in New York in probably 15 years. Mm-hmm. So like I'm looking at it a whole different lens now. I can literally sit on a bench and just people watch for a few hours in that kind of,
Yeah, just not as much in the cold.
Not much in the cold, right?
Yeah, I can't sit on a bench for a while in the cold. And in Florida, it's a lot warmer, right? Or you guys still have a cold front going on?
We had that like Arctic blast you guys had down here. It got like low 40s at night, but it's already back up to high 60s, 70s. So
okay. Yeah. Well, lucky you guys.
Yeah. Well, it's one of those things like you don't appreciate the warm unless you come back to the cold every now and then.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah, that is true. Are you originally from New York?
So I'm originally from Ohio.
Okay.
Yeah.
Where in Ohio?
So there's a working class suburb just east of Columbus, the capital. So I'm from out there. But, as I got older, I lived all over Franklin County, Columbus, Ohio. So if I had to say something was my hometown, it'd be Columbus.
Okay. Who'd you grow up with?
So I had a mom and dad in the family, right? I don't ever remember my parents being together, but they were together for like a short time when I was a baby. But I always remember having 2 different homes or whatever. But mainly my mother, right? And then like I would see my father on visitation. Like most kids in the 90s, I was like a product of divorce, you know what I mean? See dad on Wednesdays and every other weekend.
Did you have any siblings?
I have a half sister. So my dad had a daughter with another woman besides my mom.
After the divorce?
So I got older sister.
Oh, okay.
Yeah,
before.
She's still in Columbus, yeah.
How old were you when you realized your parents were separated?
In my mind, they were always separated. You know what I mean? Like I was so young when that they separated, I don't have any recollection of it.
How did you feel seeing other kids your age having parents that were together?
So look, I've thought about this over the years because me and my dad we had a real weird relationship. Like there was times when it was estranged, at times it wasn't. But like I know a lot of guys that grew up without dads, right? And my dad wasn't like the picture perfect father by any means, but I never doubted that my dad like didn't love me. You know what I mean? Mm. So like I could understand like how some people like not having a father around, it could be really traumatizing to their life, but it was just normal to me. My dad lived over here. My mom lived over here.
What did your parents do for work?
So my mom was a waitress. Yeah, mom just a waitress. Food service. She was a lunch lady for a while. You know what I mean? My dad worked for the city. Yeah.
Was she your lunch lady?
No, she wasn't my lunch lady.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, no. That was after I moved on, got older, so.
What did your dad do for the city?
He's a fireman.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah.
Did you look up to him for that?
As I got older, yeah.
Did you want to become a firefighter?
I've thought about it, but like I've done so much damage to my past that like my driving record, even if I wanted to, no fire department's going to hire me to drive no fire truck or city vehicle around. You know what I mean? It's just part of it. So.
Do you have a license now?
Yeah, I got a license.
Okay.
Yeah.
So at least you got a license.
Yeah, I got a license.
How would people describe you as a kid? What kind of person were you?
Man, so a lot of people like they come and they talk about their childhood and then like the progressive story begins. But mine actually starts more when I was younger, right? Because I was always in trouble starting right out,
How old were you the first time you got into trouble?
Probably, I started getting suspended around 5th grade, a lot of acting out. And like I'm from that generation in the 90s where they're labeling kids, ADHD and, doping everybody up on like Ritalin and Adderall and stuff. And like, I don't know, I guess you could say I was like seeking attention. Things weren't too good at home, so maybe I was just acting out. Stuff like that, you know what I mean?
Do you think the home life had the biggest effect on you?
Almost definitely, yeah. Most kids,
Did your parents have any substance abuse issues?
Yeah, so you could swing a dead cat by the tail and hit a drug addict or alcoholic somewhere in my family, you know what I mean? So it's pretty common. And like on my mom's side, like I know, her Uncle Danny, or my Uncle Danny, her brother, died of an overdose. Her dad was a heavy drinker. My mom's a heavy drinker. Then on my dad's side was really weird, right? Not really weird, but like they could still function. I'm not saying every member of my dad's side of the family, but they were like really heavy drinkers, but they could still like hold jobs, hold licenses and cars. You know what I mean? Like still function in society without the alcohol affect them too much. It's just like when they would go home, they would drink a lot. You know what I mean?
Do you think it got passed down to you genetically?
Yeah. Yeah, I believe in it being genetically. But that's a whole nother topic we could dive into and spend hours on. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Do you want to give us the brief summary of why you think that?
I don't know. I'm not a scientist. Yeah.
Have you done research on it? Like after, being in recovery and stuff, out of curiosity for yourself?
I went really far down the wormhole on this one day, right? And it was like they could... So like back when, and I don't know if it's true, but this is just what I've read, and I read a little bit on it. It's like back in the day when we were like hunter-gatherers, like the hunters, like their brains rewired to have like heightened dopamine levels, because like when they're out like hunting the saber-toothed tiger and it's like chasing them, they got to like fight it. They got to be like firing on all cylinders, right? And then like as humans progressed and then introduced substances, like it had something to do with that. But like I said, that's a whole tangent I'm not going to go off on. So.
How old were you when you realized there was substance abuse issues in your family?
I've always known, it was pretty common. And like, so where I grew up, right? And I always tell people like this, like I wasn't born in like South Central LA or South Chicago or East Detroit or anything crazy. It's a pretty like blue collar working class area. But I just remember by the time I was able to start like recognizing things that were going on around me, right? Like, everyone on my little block here, like they all struggled with something, and a lot of the underlying cause of it was alcohol, right? And like a lot of it was like domestic violence, right? And I'm not laughing at like domestic violence, but like, like I had a neighbor to the right, and like he was always beating up on his wife, and like the guy across the street and his girlfriend, they were always beating up on each other because they were always drunk. You know what I mean? So like I really started noticing at a young age, like what alcohol did to families. You know what I mean? It's always chaotic, always the police. The moms always have a black eye. The dads are always getting hauled off the jail. You know what I mean? The dad's not working because like he's sitting around drinking all the time. He's not mowing the grass, and it's just like a cycle of alcoholism. So
fifth grade about you start getting into trouble, suspended.
Yeah.
Are you getting into like fights too and stuff as acting out?
Yeah, definitely. So like this is something so it really began, and I'm sure this is a lot of people's story, but like the people I started hanging out with, you know what I mean? And as I've gotten more into recovery, I've learned the term trauma bonding. Right. So like if you get a bunch of kids that are all from like the same situation where it's really dysfunctional at home, they tend to stick together. Right. Because they could like identify and vibe with each other on that certain level. And what happens when you get a bunch of kids to early teenagers who are all trauma bonding because of chaotic at home, it go like one or two ways. Right. They could get like involved in sports and go in a positive way, or at least in my case, it go in the negative way. Right. And I was, I'm a short dude, and I was never like really cool or anything. So like I got like picked on a lot, you know what I mean? And I always like really struggled to like find my identity because I didn't like hang out. I didn't fit in with these people or these people or these people or these people. When I started finding kids that were from like a similar situation as I was, and then like, we clicked, and then we would go out and get in trouble. And then like, especially like when the weed and the alcohol started coming in, like I was like, oh, I found my people, right? I felt like at home with some people somewhere doing something, you know what I mean?
Did you watch that episode with Nadine? I did, that Wolf of Wall Street's ex-wife. She really talks about trauma bonding.
I haven't. I didn't. I saw the thumbnail, but I didn't listen to it.
Okay, yeah, because that's what she does now. She's a therapist or psychologist or something in that, and her specialty is trauma bonds. So it's a really interesting episode. It was really insightful for people, that are coming out of addiction or crime or prison or even relationships. It was very relatable.
Yeah, cool.
Were you into sports at all as a kid?
So I played like little league baseball and stuff, but where I really started, I got into BMX, right? So like the little area of town, they built like a skate park probably when I was 12. So like we would all flock to the skate park, ride around on bikes and stuff. But a lot of times like we would go to the skate park and yeah, like we'd pretend like we were riding, but we're really like under the gazebo, like just getting in trouble.
Yeah, that was like me because I never knew how to skate. But I would wear the skater clothes because I wanted to fit in.
Yeah.
I wanted to be liked, and then I would carry around my skateboard, go to Zoomies at the mall and all that kind of stuff, and pack sun.
It was like an accessory almost.
Yeah, exactly. You had to. And then you get the Heelys. Did you guys have Heelys?
The Heelys. I remember I never had a pair, but I remember what you're talking about.
Yeah, I would always bust my ass, but they were fun.
That's hilarious.
Yeah, Heelys were good, man. I wonder if they make those anymore.
I don't know.
I wonder if those are still even on the market. When was the first time you got into, like, say, serious trouble? Maybe with the law or anything like that.
So like before we start going down this rabbit hole, like I was telling you that I actually organized this interview for another person and I came on, right? And I know you've had like some heavy hitters sitting in this chair, and like by no means am I like a leader or a prison warrior or anything crazy. I can only tell you my story,
of course.
You know? But like I started getting in small trouble about 12, right? And just like real basic stuff like throwing snowballs at cars, you know, and getting arrested for that. And then like I got in a few fights in like high school, you know, and like this was a long, then it's crazy to think that this was a long time ago, but we're talking about like the early 2000s. So things weren't as like, things were a little different. Things would get swept under the rug a little bit more than they would like today, you know, but I had finally gotten on probation for something. And then I got in a fight after school when I was 13. And that was like my first time going to the Juvenile Detention Center down there in Franklin County.
How bad was the fight?
So not even really that bad. So it really, really bad misfortune. So like I told you, I used to get picked on, right? So when I finally like started hanging out with like, you know, my people or whatever, like I decided that I was going to stop being bullied. Right. And I remember this kid was like messing with me real bad in like front of people. And I was like, I've never been in a fight before. And I'm like, you know what? I'm going to challenge this guy to a fight. Right. So I was like, all right. So we're going to fight after school in these apartment complexes, like on the opposite side of the school property or whatever. And I thought it might just be like him and me and a few other people. But by the time that like the end of school came, like half the school knew. So like I'm walking out and like not half, but like a large group of people are now coming to watch this fight. And so we ended up getting the fight, and literally the moment we start fighting, a cop car pulls up. Mm-hmm. And like I was on top of him. So then I was the one charged with assault.
There was no witnesses that could have said that, you know, you were the one being picked on or bullied?
No, I don't think that would have played out anyway.
Wow. It's kind of crazy you actually got charged too. I remember there would be fights in school. No one necessarily got charged.
So at this point, like that police department of that little area, like had known me and like the small amounts of trouble that I've been getting up to that point. And like, I think they were just ready to do something more serious with me or whatever. And then, you know, I went to Juvie at 13, and then from about 13 to 18, I had actually spent more time inside of like a juvenile detention placement or corrections than I actually did outside of like regular school.
How did your parents respond to you acting out and getting into trouble as a kid?
So my mom worked a lot, man. So like, you know, she was a waitress, and like sometimes she wouldn't get back till like 8 or 9 o'clock at night. So I'd be out roaming, and like, how do I say this? Like she would be upset, but she like really wouldn't do anything about it. It's like yell at me and stuff. And my dad would try to be like the authoritarian, but like I didn't see him enough to really it have any effect on me. You know what I mean? And then when I really started getting in trouble, I started seeing my dad less and less and less because, you know, my mom will let me do whatever I want and my dad will discipline me. So like, who am I obviously going to, you know, whose house am I going to live at the most? I'm going to spend time at my mom's house, right? Because she lets me do whatever I want, or not do whatever I want, but she's not around enough for me to, you know, for her to know what I'm doing. So,
did you have a close relationship with your dad, even though, you know, you spent most of your time with your mom and you thought your mom was less strict than him?
On into my 20s. Like when I became adult, me and my dad got closer. Mm. Yeah.
Do you wish he was more involved during your childhood?
So listen, he genuinely did try. He really did, but like I just wasn't receptive to it at that point. You know what I mean?
Now, during those years of going in and out of juvenile detention, are you using substances at all?
At that point, I'm just smoking weed and like drinking and stuff. So
doing what kids do.
Doing what kids do. Yeah, you can say that.
Did you end up graduating high school?
So I graduated, but the only reason I graduated, so like at least in the state of Ohio, like when you're in a juvenile facility, any schoolwork you do in that facility, the credits count towards your actual high school that you're supposed to be attending. Mm-hmm. At least it did then. I don't know now. But
now, at that point, did you have any like career aspirations, what you wanted to be when you grew up in high school?
Oh, no, not at all. Yeah. So like half of me, I always wanted to like join the Army. You know what I mean? So that was like a far-fetched thing I wanted to do.
Why the Army?
I don't know. Why not, right? My grandpa was a veteran and stuff. So, and then, yeah, so I went to the Juvenile Detention Center at 13. And you know, it's crazy now, like I have a job and sometimes I deal with families and stuff and like tourists because I live in Florida, right? And like I'll see these 13-year-old kids and like you'll see just like how young and immature they are. You know what I mean? And you can tell they come from a good family because they're there with their family. But I look at these 13-year-old kids, I'm like, man, they were like locking me up when I was that old. You know, like your mental capacity is not even there at that point. You know, and like I thought I was running with like a tough crowd or whatever then, but by the time I went to the Juvenile Detention Center down there in Franklin County, I had like a real rude awakening, like really quick. You know what I mean? And like I said, the place where I'm from in Franklin, working class area. I mean, there's some riffraff or whatever, but like by the time I hit the Franklin County Juvenile Detention Center, like you really see what goes on in like the inner city, right? So like there's a lot of these kids, like, you know, real people that are involved in like street gangs and stuff. And like I knew that existed. I met a few dudes like in passing or whatever, but actually like seeing it in its politics full effect, like right there in front of you was like, it was pretty intense. And I remember it was probably like my second or third day in, and I started learning lessons like really quick, like what to do and what not to do. And the first lesson I learned is like, it used to be cold. So like dudes would like tuck their arms inside of their, you know, their thing, and like their arms would pretty much be trapped. And like there was like a few rows of seats and like with a TV up high, and like everyone was there and look at the TV. And then there was like a bench where like people play cards, and I'm sitting at the bench and like I'm also watching the TV, and there's like this kid and he's got his like arms tucked in his sleeve so he can't really defend himself, and he like was having a problems with some other dude, and like this dude just walked up these steps and just had target practice on his face, right? And I remember like you know that sound like meat smacking meat, especially a jaw, like that specific slap crack type sound. And like he broke his jaw and he just sat there just hammering away on this dude's face for a few minutes, right? And I remember like his eye didn't like come out of his socket, but like it was like bulging farther out than like it was naturally supposed to. And then like I watched it happen, and like the staff broke it up. And you know, I'm only 13 years old, right? And I realized that like this is you know, this is something completely different.
Join the great rewards hunt at DraftKings Casino, where you'll find massive jackpots, exclusive games, and weekly rewards. And here's the best part. New players can get 500 casino spins on a featured game. Just sign up with code Ian Bick and wager at least $5 to claim your spins. Ready to play? Only at DraftKings Casino. The crown is yours. Gambling problem? Call 1-800-GAMBLER. In Connecticut, help is available for problem gambling. Call 888-789-7777 or visit ccpg.org. Please play responsibly. 21 plus. Physically present in Michigan, New Jersey, Pennsylvania, West Virginia only. Void in Connecticut and Ontario. Eligibility restrictions apply. New customers only. Non-withdrawable casino spins valid for featured game only and expire in 168 hours. See terms at casino.draftkings.com/promos. Ends 4/27/25 at 11:59 p.m. Eastern time. How did you feel about those kids that were in gangs and stuff? Did you think it was cool, or you're like, I'm staying out of trouble after this one?
Like it was interesting, you know what I mean? And like, you know, as the years progressed and I spent more and more time in these places, I got to know some of them, right? And one thing I really started to realize is a lot of them were just normal kids, normal people, you know what I mean? They wanted things. You know, they wanted loved. They just happened to grow up in a different area than I did and had a different, you know, perspective on the world or whatever. You know, and then like you really start learning like a lot of these different neighborhoods and cliques, like they have politics that span back from like, you know, their uncles and their dads and their grandpas, you know what I mean? So like, you know, this kid might not like this kid because this kid's dad used to have problems with this dude's dad back in the 90s and 80s. And it's just like a nonstop progression or whatever.
Is that because it's like small town vibes, or is there just only one juvenile detention facility for that region? Or?
There's only, for Franklin County. So Columbus is, I always say it's a big town, a small city, you know? It's not New York by any means, but I mean, it's a city.
Were there a lot of violent offenders there?
Yeah, most definitely.
Did that kind of put your life in perspective too? That you weren't getting into that kind of serious trouble, but you were still there?
Well, I mean, and then the story progresses, right? So like my first go, like, you know, I spent like 2 months down there at the Juvenile Detention Center. And then I get out and like, you know, I think I'm Mr. Cool Tough Guy because I just spent this time in juvenile detention. And then like every time I would get in trouble, like it would be for a more worse thing. And then I would end up spending more time. in like in a facility. You know what I mean?
Why didn't your parents bail you out right away, or was it mandated
You
to
can't.
do 2
Juveniles
months?
don't have bail.
Okay, so you're stuck there until like what's the capacity? Like the time limit?
So at least where I'm from, they got 7 to 10 days until they have to like take you to court until they're either going to release you or hold you for trial or a continuance.
So that first fight, did you end up getting charged officially?
Yeah. So
And they sentenced you to 2 months?
yeah, they had a program called the CAP program. It's like your first time going, and like you take these like classes or whatever in the detention center, and and I started learning really hard lessons. So like I watched dude get stole on with his arms. Lesson number 1, you always keep your arms outside of your things so you could at least protect yourself. And then I got assaulted probably 2 or 3 weeks after that. My second lesson I learned is you don't cut people in line, because like we would do, like as juveniles you go to school and then like there's a cafeteria that you go and you eat, and I learned really quick not to cut people in line, and I thought it was cute, and I remember I cut this dude. I still remember his name too. His name was Code, and he was probably 17 and I was 13, and there's a big difference between a 13-year-old and a 17-year-old, right? And I cut in front of him, and like he said something, I just kind of laughed about it, and then the next thing you know, I'm coming to it like in the nurse's office or the medical department, because he stole me from behind, right? And I just everything went black. So that was my second lesson. You don't cut people in line. You don't keep your arms inside your shirt.
When you got out of juvenile detention that first time, did you go back to your same high school that you were in?
Yes.
So you didn't get expelled?
No, I didn't get expelled. So that ended the school year, and then like summer, and then the next school year.
Was it weird going back to school after getting out of juvenile detention? Like were people maybe bullying you or spreading rumors or anything because you were that kid that did time?
No, I thought it was like cool. I thought I was like a cool kid, because especially like all the people I identified and hung out with were troublemakers or whatever. So like I kind of wore it like a badge of honor at first, and that didn't last too long. I'd say about maybe a month later, I was right back in. I was driving around a car at that. Then now I was 14, and me and this buddy, we took out his mom's car in the middle of the night, and I wrecked it going like 65 miles an hour. And then he's like, "Oh man, you wrecked my mom's car," and he ended up going back home, and I just told him to tell his parents that I took it. Or whatever.
So what happened once he told them? The cops showed up right away? They called the cops?
Yeah.
Oh, they didn't want to resolve it like between your families or anything?
No.
Ooh. Did that end the friendship with you and your friend?
Yeah, things were weird for a while after that.
So the cops showed up at your house the next morning?
Yeah, the next morning. Well, like the next evening.
So where did you leave the car somewhere when you wrecked it?
So like me and him took the car, and like mind you, we're like 14 years old, and like he was talking to this girl or whatever, and like we went over to the girl's house. He's like, "Oh, I want some time alone. Why don't you take the car and go do something?" And I knew like this Korean like liquor store, corner store that would like sell us cigarettes even though we were underage. So like I took the car to the liquor store. I bought the cigarettes, and like I'm coming down like this hill, and it's like a big 5-way intersection, and it's like a really big turn. But I've never really driven before, so I didn't really brake. So I went to like take this big curve at like 50 miles an hour, and I smacked into a giant light pole. The light pole fell down. The car was totaled out, and then like I just got out and ran from it.
Oh, you guys left it there?
Yeah, I left it there.
Oh, shit.
So,
how did your parents react to that arrest?
Yeah, they weren't happy.
Why do you think they didn't take any like precautions or anything to maybe move you to a different school, different environment, make sure you're hanging out with different people after that first time?
I mean, they didn't have the means to like really necessarily move, and then I mean you could say they tried, but at the end of the day, if someone wants to if I want to do something, I'm going to do it. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm. So you get arrested and put back to juvenile detention.
Yeah, back in juvenile detention. And, and by this time, like I said, I'm a littler guy, right? And then like the bullying started again, right? And like, guys were trying to, call me out in front of people and try to belittle me or whatever. And then, I finally decided I'm not going to take it. And like when I say all this, like I'm not an MMA fighter, I'm not like this big street fighter or anything, but I eventually learned if I don't step up for myself and like nip this in the bud now, it's just going to keep continuing and continuing. And it might sound real cowardly, right? But especially in like a juvenile detention center where there's staff everywhere, like you got to learn the art of just stealing on people, especially if they're bigger than you, and so like and then I realized like any fight is going to be broken up within 20 to 30 seconds. So like it's better just to get your licks in and make it look like you're not weak, and just get it over with. And then at least you have the respect, and then at least the people will stop bullying you and messing with you. You know what I mean?
How long were you in there for that stint?
So that time was another few months, maybe a month and a half. And then, I get back out, and then I keep violating probation because I can't stop smoking weed, and then I got put back in Juvie again. Then that was my first time I went to do you know the term placement?
In the juvenile detention system, or? Yeah,
in the juvenile detention system. So like, at least in Ohio, I can't speak on other states. You have like a juvenile detention, right? That's where you are for a small sentence, or if you're awaiting trial. I mean, you know what I mean? Or until you're sentenced. And in the state of Ohio, like our juvenile correction system is called DYS, Department of Youth Services. I know in like California, it's like YA. Florida, it's like the youthful offenders, but in Ohio, it's called the Department of Youth Services, right? So there's a step before Ohio Department of Youth Services called a placement. Like sometimes it's a lockdown facility, but you're technically not doing like a sentence in DYS or whatever. So like it's like usually they'll try sending you there once or twice before they actually send you to DYS. So like I went through my first placement. And so I was in Juvie for quite a few months on that. And then I went and I had to do 6 months there, right? And it was pretty bad. So that's my first time like, hey, you have to do 6 months. When you're a teenager, 6 months seems like forever. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And so yeah, they had me there. They took me to this place and I just wasn't getting on at all. And by this time, like I'm full-fledged rebellious. Like I can't sit still. I'm disrespecting staff. I just don't want to be there, don't want to do the schoolwork. And like it was a lockdown place. Like you couldn't get out of the unit. And then like where you did outdoor rec, there was like a fenced in little area, high fences. And they wouldn't give me my shoes for like a month and a half, like for whatever reason. And I remember the first time they gave me back my shoes, we were going to the outside rec, and then like between the rec. So it's off Alum Creek Drive, and it's like near the adult community correctional facility. There's like the sheriff, our office has like a satellite department there. And then there's the place I was at. And like before, as you're leaving the building to go to the outdoor kind of fenced in area, there's like a gap where it's just open parking lot and then like the sheriff's office. But technically you could run like right to the little highway right there. So we, and I took advantage of this lady too. It wasn't even like a staff member there. It was like a counselor who was taking us outside to, as like art or something stupid like that. And the moment we got in between like that little open area is like, it wasn't pre-planned or anything. I just looked to the right and I saw the open highway and I just took off running. So like I ended up kind of, I wouldn't call it escaping because I didn't like tunnel through a tunnel or hop any, you know what I mean, get in a laundry basket and get pushed out. But like I got right the fuck out of there. And, I run across this highway and like, the sheriff's department's there, the adult community correctional facilities are there. And I ended up running across the street. I run into these woods. I'm running through this graveyard. And as I'm running through this graveyard, I accidentally like kick a headstone and like it rips my big toenail off like my big toe. Oh. But long story short, I ended up walking like 6.5 miles all the way back to like the area I was from with this broken toenail. And then, they put, warrants out for my arrest. And this is like my first time, and I wasn't even 16 yet. And this was like my first time experiencing, knowing what life was like out there on your own. Cause like I didn't go home. I didn't go back to my parents' house. I couldn't because that's where they were there looking for me. So like, I tried roaming around and like I would stay with like friends or whatever, but they couldn't like keep their mouth closed. I mean, rightfully so, they're like teenagers, but they would go to school and be like, oh, guess who's like staying at my house or whatever. And that would get up to the police and then the police would show up there. So I ended up, ending up on the side of town. And I was like literally living out on the street as like a 15-year-old, but I wasn't like on hard drugs yet. Like I was smoking weed or whatever. And like that's when I really started seeing like the ugly side of the world, right? And like, I met this prostitute who was like a woman to me then. Like she seemed like a really old woman, but she was probably younger than I am today. And like I remember like she like took me in because like I was younger or whatever, and like she would smoke weed with me and stuff, and she would like take me to people's houses so I could like take showers and sleep. And this went on like at 15 years old. I was just literally pretty much sleeping outside, just kind of roaming around figuring it out.
Why was no one batting an eye that there's like a teenager walking around,
So this sounds real messed up, but in some parts of Columbus, it's not uncommon. You go to an area where there's a lot of drug activity, you see all types of crazy shit.
Were your parents actively looking for you that you knew of?
I'm sure they were. Yeah. And it was funny. I was walking down the street and I was looking real grody at that point. Like I just had like a backpack and like, I would try to take clothes from like thrift stores or whatever. And then my old neighbor, so like I was telling you about that street where like everyone, was getting drunk and just being all crazy and stuff. We had a neighbor on the left, Miss Heidi Carter, and she just happened to be driving down the street and saw me one day. And she's like, you really need to go home and see your mom. And I went home and saw my mom, and she's like, yeah, just sleep here, take a shower. We'll get all this figured out. And my mom called the cops on me later that night. So like I was in bed and they came and got me.
How long on the run was that total?
A few weeks. Maybe
weeks.
2 or 3 weeks.
Pretty good run for, a juvenile for your age. How did you react when you found out your mom was the one that called the cops?
Oh, I was super upset, right? But, now as an adult, I understand. Like, I understand, right? Because, like, at the end of the day, I had to face it. It was never going away. And at the end of the day, she could have gotten in trouble for having me there. But, at the time, I'm super resentful, right? And
how much more time did you get in juvenile detention for that?
So I went to juvenile detention, spent a few more months, and then went to a different like placement program in a different place.
Did they all think you were like the cool guy in there for technically escaping?
It was funny because like before I left the juvenile detention center and then went to the placement program, I remember telling a few guys in there like, "Oh, I'm running from this place. I'm not staying." And even though it was an impulsive move to like jet right when I did, it was like still in my subconscious that I was going to do it. And like I walked back in and they already knew what happened. Then I ended up going to a different placement, and it was real low key. There's actually nothing crazy to report. You just went to school.
When did you get done with the juvenile detention system?
Oh, a few times after that, man. So I get out of there and I get back out, and then I get back in trouble again. And I used to tag, right? Like do graffiti. And like we had this like little group or whatever, and like we would tag all over town. And then we got caught for tagging, and then like someone told her somehow, and then they connected everyone's name to the name you would tag on. So I had like 26 criminal damaging, violating probation again, and got caught with weed at a different high school. So then I went back to Juvie, and then I went to a different placement again this time. But this is my longest stretch. So like I had done like, 6 months, 4 months, 1 month, 2 months. But this time, like I ended up doing about 10 months. Right. And I went to another placement. And if anyone's from Ohio and like went through the juvenile justice system in like the early 2000s, there was this place called Cornell Abraxas. And the Abraxas, like Cornell Abraxas is like a juvenile behavioral conglomerate. It's like a big corporation that owns like different facilities in like PA, Indiana, Ohio or whatever. And this place, it was a bit different than like what I was used to. Like the other places were almost like kindergarten compared to this place. Like not as much as like violence on like kid on kid, but it was like real intense. And it actually came out quite a few years later, but there was like a lot of staff abuses that went on in this place. And like, so they have lockdown units, but technically they don't have lockdown rooms. Right. So like if you would while out, what they would do is they would like restrain the shit out of you. They'd twist you up like a pretzel until you literally had just no more fight left in you. And then they would send you back in your room. But they were doing it to a crazy level. Like if you disrespected like the staff, they would just twist you up and slam you down on the floor and lay on top of you for 20 minutes. And they actually got in a lot of trouble for this as the years went on. I remember there was this kid, and he had like he was born with like a birth defect, right? And he had like smaller arms. It's really fucked up, man, because kids used to call him like T-Rex and shit. But I liked him, and his name was Randy. And they, they ended up restraining him and like breaking one of his, like, disformed arms or whatever, right? And like his family was threatening to take him to court or whatever, and they released him immediately to like cover it up.
Oh, like they cut his sentence down?
Yeah, they just cut his sentence down, let him out. So like once you get sentenced to the placement, they decide your out time. So it's 6 to 10 months. You know what I mean? So if you behave and you you jump through all their hoops and you're going good at school, they could decide if you get out in 6 months to 10 months.
Are they doing like counseling at all or therapy or anything like that?
Yeah, they do counseling and therapy and stuff. But
did that help you at all or?
No, not at all. I wasn't receptive to any of it,
Why do you think that was?
It just wasn't my time to be receptive to it. I didn't care.
Were your parents supportive while you were in there, like visiting you, keeping a relationship? Not
so much. They maybe came 2 or 3 times the entire 9-10 months I was up there.
Why do you think they didn't, come often or be supportive?
They were over me, right? I was causing a lot of chaos in their house and bringing, I was really mean to my mom. I could never physically abuse my mom or anything crazy like that. But me and her would just get in these vicious arguments. You know what I mean?
Does that put your perspective or change your perspective now as a dad? Raising your kids?
What do you mean?
Like, do you think now that you're a parent, if your kids would act that way, if you would be there for them or not, or how would you navigate it?
I mean, within reason, I would definitely be there for them. You know what I mean?
So how old are you when you were completely done with the juvenile justice system?
18. Yeah.
And where were you at in life? Did you have a job? Were you planning to go to college?
So after the 10 months, I ended up getting in trouble one more time, right? And then I ended up doing a year for that. And then by the time I get out, so I had a lot of people help me along the way. Like a lot of the educators, you know what I mean? Because at that point, so I'd failed 9th grade twice because of absences and just not showing up to school and stuff. A lot of these educators smudged records, you know what I mean? So I'd at least get out with a high school diploma. Right. And then I remember there was this principal named Mr. Tesso, and he'd come in, be like, well, we need some credits for gym or whatever. And he'd be like, oh, do you play basketball during yard time or whatever? I'd be like, yeah. He's like, well, it seems like a gym credit to me. Right. And then they hooked me up with an online school. So even after I was done taking the school you're required to attend, I would do online school in the afternoon so I could accelerate it. So somehow, some way, I left it all with a high school diploma.
Okay. And did you want to go to college? Did you go to college?
No. So I get out freshly 18, and then remember I always wanted to join the Army, right? So I print out my record because you have to show the record or whatever, and I ended up going to an active Army recruiter. And I'm like, I want to join the Army. This is in 2007, so this is during Bush had his big troop surge thing. It was just crazy times in 87. And I remember I went into the active Army recruiter and he looked at my record. He's like, man, I can't even begin to try to waiver all this. But he gave me a nudge. He gave me a wink. He's like, you should go talk to the Army National Guard recruiter. I'm like, all right, cool. So I went over to the Army National Guard recruiter, and he was a real scumbag, but he was able to waive. He was able to pretty much hide most of my record. Once again, it's 2007. Things aren't as caught up as they are now. And then he's like, well, if you want to go active Army, he's like, join the National Guard. You could get back, and then within 6 months, you could then go to the active Army. I'm like, all right, cool. And then, so then I ended up actually going to basic training. It was actually called OSIT.
I'm surprised none of that was under seal, your juvenile record.
No, you have to show it.
Okay, and you couldn't get any type of accelerated rehabilitation where they knock off some charges or anything?
No, not at that point. Mm-hmm. And I mean, we left a lot out that I was actually charged with as a juvenile.
Some serious crimes, or?
Yeah, there's serious. So my last, the thing that I got done for the last time, it was a firearm possession and tampering with evidence. Then they tried to charge us with discharge of a firearm into a habitation because we were shooting out street lights and stop signs, and I guess one went into a house allegedly. So and then even though I wasn't charged with it, it was still shown that even though I wasn't convicted of it, it was still shown that I was charged for it. You know what I mean? So like when I printed out my record and take it to the recruiter, they still see all of that. You know what I mean?
And it sounds even worse on paper.
And it sounds even worse, yeah.
Now, did you have any like really malicious or violent intent to have a gun, or are you guys just kids being kids?
So, okay, so I get out of that one place, and I come back, and then I end up staying with my dad. And then long story short, I end up running away for the summer, right? So like I'm kind of just like living back out on my own as like a teenager, like staying with friends or whatever. And then this is when I kind of got into like the cannabis a little bit. Like I was just selling like small sacks of weed or whatever, making extra $100 a week. And I'm not really like too big of a thief or like a burglar, but me and a good friend of mine, we went over to this dude's house, and like he was like this wannabe coke dealer. Like he was full of shit. Like he sold a little bit of coke or whatever, and he was, but he acted a lot tougher than he really was. And like we were sitting in his room, and like he had this safe, and he was like showing us all these firearms. He's like, oh, like I do this, that, and the third. And like me and my buddy look at each other like, oh yeah, we're coming back for this guy, dude. And sure enough, we went back, and we ended up climbing his back window, and we took his safe. And we had the firearms out of it, and then we were trying to like sell the firearms for cash, obviously, right? And then we had another friend who had just got in trouble for a robbery. He had like beaten up this dude and took his book bag or whatever. And he like they made a deal with him, like, oh, if you could help us out with X amount of felonies, we could work with you, right? So he actually set it up. He told us like, listen, I want to take a look at some of his guns. I might buy him. And then as we go pick him up, and then like it was a setup all from the beginning. Like as soon as we picked them up, they were like following us. And then we're like driving down the street, and then we get lit up by the cherries and berries, and then like some undercover cars like cut us off. And anyone from Columbus knows like they've been using that police helicopter for as long as I could remember. Like it is always overhead. And sometimes it shows up for just the smallest shit, right? Like, and you'll be sitting in your backyard, and they'll be like illuminating, like going up and down the backyards, like. Anyone from Franklin County knows you always hear that thing every single day, but it like lit us up, and then they like brought us out of the car. And then because like I was with adults since I was a juvenile, I took the charges for the firearms.
And said it was yours because you were going to get less time.
Because I didn't get less time, yeah.
Okay. So I'm surprised now that the military accepted you, like to go to basic.
So that's why he was like, wink, wink, go talk to the National Guard recruiter. And I think what the National Guard recruiter did is like, I'm from Franklin County, but he's like, here, we'll get you a Licking County address, so if they pull their file, it'll look like it's coming from a different county. And he finagled it, but he actually ended up finagling me, right? Because during that time, they were giving out like $20,000, $25,000 sign-up bonuses. And when I ended up going to OSA, I went to Fort Knox. I was the only person there that didn't get a sign-on bonus. So like he benefited too, right?
What, you think he pocketed the sign-on bonus?
I don't think he like pocketed it, but I'm sure he gets incentives for spending as less money as possible to get people in. You know what I mean? I'm not saying he like pocketed $20,000, but I'm sure he got some kind of incentive to do it.
How did your parents feel about you going to the military?
So at this time, my mom, as I got in trouble again, my mom dipped. I didn't see her for like 7 years after that, right? And and then like even after I got out, like I wasn't back at my dad's house. So my dad didn't even really know. I just kind of like showed up at his house one day to grab some clothes. I'm like, oh, by the way, I'm going to the Army or whatever. And he's like, oh, okay. And then, I went.
Do you think you wanted to join the Army to kind of like force yourself to escape the path you were on?
Exactly. I just want to get the fuck out of Columbus, Ohio. You know what I mean?
Did you know that you wouldn't be able to smoke weed or do any type of drugs or anything joining?
Yeah.
Was that hard to let go when you
No, I didn't let it go. That's why it didn't last too long. You know what I mean? So I ended up, I go to Fort Knox, and like the behavior is still in there, right? So at least back then, like you have basic training in AIT, or if you have like a certain MOS, you do something called OSIT. It's one-stop unit training. So you do the basic and the job training all in the same place. Same instructors, everything, you know what I mean? So, I was and I was in the Army National Guard. So that means like I did basic. So it was like 4 months with basic in the job training. And then like you get out and you do 1 week in a month, 2 weeks out of the year.
Okay.
Right. So, and actually I really excelled at it. But by the time and then you got to realize I'm going back to right where I was trying to escape. And by the time I get back there, like, I'd saved up a decent amount of money for an 18-year-old. Doing all that. And like, I was completely influenced right away with the same people, same stuff. So, I mean, within a year, I was discharged. Not dishonorable, it's like a general under honorable. You know what I mean? Like literally so they call it drills. Like you have to show up on a weekend. It's called, you got to go to drill. On like my third drill, I didn't show up because like I was in the county. You know what I mean? And they were almost ready to slip that under the rug, but my dumbass couldn't stop smoking weed. You know what I mean? So like I show back up, they're like, oh, maybe we can do something. Then I drop 30 and there's like, there's nothing we can do, man. Like you fucked up.
Were you dabbling in any other drugs at the time or just weed?
So yeah. And then I started dabbling. And like a lot of my friends, they started dabbling in harder drugs in the teens, but I was never at home. So like when people are experiencing like ecstasy and coke and shit, like I'm not there. So like I was like late to the hard drug party, I guess if you call it like that. But I started dabbling around with ecstasy. Actually, like, and like I sound really bad because like you'll get some veterans on here, and like when I talk about being in the National Guard, like I'm really ashamed of it. You know what I mean? Because I fucked it up. So I don't want to take anything away from anyone that like served honorably, was able to get their shit together and not get in trouble. Like I'm not sitting here bragging about it. I don't think it's cool. It was actually, it really tore me up for years because I was like, I finally made it out. I'm finally able to do what I want to do, and I fucked it up. So that hang real heavy on that. So like I'm not bragging about this, but this is just like my story, right? So
do you ever picture what life would have been like had you stuck with the military and stayed with it and stayed sober and followed the rules?
I mean, yeah, I don't know.
Don't waste much time.
Don't wait. Yeah. Coulda, woulda, shoulda.
It's in the past.
In the past, yeah.
So what happens after you get discharged?
So at this time, you got to realize from 13 till about 19 and a half, I've been in like a real like controlled environment, like discipline. And like, then I get out and like I have nothing to do. No one telling me what to do. You know what I mean? So I immediately just start falling back on old behaviors with the old people. And then this is kind of when I started getting, so all that money I'd saved from the military, like, I started investing it in like just drugs or so. Like I said, I'm not going to sit here and be like, I'm like some ecstasy kingpin or some shit or whatever, right? But, that's when I really started getting into like the cannabis. And this is, or weed, you know what I mean? And this is 2009, 2010, I guess. And this is like, I guess, the golden age before everyone was, doing shit with cannabis.
Yeah, that's when I was a freshman in high school, 2009 to 2010.
And I would just go find odd jobs, and then I would just sell weed. And like I'm not a big trafficker, kingpin, or whatever, but I mean, like at 20 years old, if you're making an extra $400 or $500 a week, just selling a few ounces, I mean that adds up. You know what I mean? On top of a job.
Why didn't you try to move to a different city or a different state at that point?
I did eventually. I was just stuck. Wanted to be around my friends that weren't doing me no good, and so.
Did anyone else try to join the military in your friend group or anything to escape that life?
Yeah, I had a few guys.
And were they successful with it?
Yeah, super successful.
Were you envious of them at all?
No, I was happy for them.
So what happens next?
So I just, a few years go by, and then, we start doing really good at the weed thing, right? And then I started getting into the like actual cultivation of it. And like these were the days when you could still get $4,000, $4,800 out of a pound, right? So, we started setting up little tiny grow houses. You know what I mean? And I remember I wasn't doing too well, and then my buddy, he was doing real well. He's like, listen, I'm gonna put you in a house. All you have to do is sit there, water some plants, and make it look like someone lives there. You know what I mean? And I'll teach you everything you know. So I kind of got taken under the wing by somebody, and he really introduced me into like the cultivating of cannabis. And like we weren't doing massive operations at first, but like if you're swinging 4 1,000s and you're getting a pound to a pound and a half, and you're getting $4,000 to $4,800 out of that pound every 3 to 4 months, like it's not like you're rich, but you could definitely like build something on it.
You're paying your bills, you're living.
Paying our bills, paying our living. And then that's when we started like, we just started getting, as time went on, we just started getting more sophisticated with it. So like, I would always partner with people. I'd be like, Ian, like, you have a house, you have a basement. How about I help you pay your electric bill? We set up some lights, and then we'll split this at the end of that. And if I have you and another guy all doing it, plus I have my house where I'm completely, and if I'm running 6 to 8 lights there, then like as it all comes around and the money comes in, I mean, it starts becoming real profitable, right? And this is right about the time I realized, like, I think I have a problem with substances, right? Because, like, I started drinking real heavy. And, like, I would be at the bars and clubs. And, like, when everyone else would go out and have a great time and, you know, I would always have to be the person that drank the most. And it was always super chaotic. You know what I mean? Like, I was always the one that, like, had to be carried out of the bar, carried out of the house party. I was always the one that was trying to get into a fight. And most of the times I would get beat up, right? You know what I mean? I was always the one getting beat up. I was always the one wrecking cars. I was always the one getting arrested. And I could just never understand why. And then, you know, I found myself, like, you know, if you drink or heavy, you feel like shit in the morning, like, what's the best way that you can make yourself feel better again?
Drink more.
You just drink more.
Why did you turn to drinking? Like, why'd you shift from just weed to alcohol?
I think of a lot of it's a cultural thing, right? Because, like, oh, you're 21, you're supposed to, like, party, man, you know what I mean? And that was, like, the age of, like, I don't know, like, Wiz Khalifa dropped, like, that Kush and orange juice, and everyone was just like, party and smoke weed, like, all the cool kids are doing it, right? So I almost feel like it's pushed down culturally on you. You know what I mean? Now,
you were mentioning ecstasy you were using. Were there any other drugs too, or is it just ecstasy, weed, and liquor?
So, like, I went through, like, a little coke bender, right? And like, I realized, like, oh, I have a problem with this, right? So I kind of stopped using it. The real hard drugs didn't start. So, like, I was doing okay. I was making a little bit of money, right? Like, I would work. I had, like, some of this weed stuff going on, and, like, you know, I wasn't rich by any means, but by, like, 23 or 24, like, I had my own house. You know what I mean? It was a nice house, it was a big house, but it was my house.
It's pretty good for a 23, 24-year-old.
Yeah. Like, I didn't have, like, a nice car, but I had a car. I had 2 cars. You know, I tried starting I had a small landscaping business, and, you know, like, I was always trying to find a way to, you know, make more money. But then I started picking up, like, expensive habits, right? So, like, on my birthday one year, I was like, you know, I think we're gonna go skydiving as, like, a group. So we went skydiving as a group, and I liked it so much. I was like, oh, I'm gonna go take a course to, you know, be able to jump on my own. I took this thing called a static line course, where when you jump, it pulls out your parachute. But anyway, on, like, my third jump, we jump. It's really windy that day, and, like, I'm coming down, and I'm, like, way away from the drop zone or whatever, and it's really windy, and I panic, and I go to land, and I ended up, like, snapping my leg in half. Right? Like, and, like, you know, you ever seen them old, like, skateboarding videos where, like, dudes and their legs will look like in a position they're not supposed to be in? Like, that was my leg. Like, it was, like, flapping around in, like, different directions. And, like, I heard the bone break. And, like, I didn't walk for a while, but I went to the hospital, I had multiple surgeries, and that's when they prescribed me the opiates. So, like, the addict, like, the substance abuse, the addict was always in there. Like, it just came out with, like, smoking every day, you know what I mean? And drinking way too heavy. But by the time, like, the opiates had hit me, like, I'd found that thing I'd, like, always been looking for.
What was that feeling for you when you had opiates in your body that first time?
Man, I remember, like, because I'd, like, had, like, small surgeries where they prescribed you, like, a few Vicodins or whatever. And that was back, like, when the pill epidemic was really taking off. And I would take them and be like, I don't really see the hype about all this. You know what I mean? But I remember at the hospital after the leg broke, they, like, hooked up the IV and they put Dilaudid in there, and I literally, like, felt it go up my arm to my back, and then it was just, like, instant. I heard someone describe it one day. It's like, if you're out in the cold and you've always been out in the cold and you finally find, like, that warm blanket to, like, wrap around yourself to comfort you, I was like, that's what it is. Right there.
So when you leave the hospital, does everything start to unravel? Everything.
So I gave it a good run at first, right? And a lot of people I had known, so what are we in, like 2011, 2012-ish? And, like, a lot of people I grew up with, I've seen them go down, like, the pain pill route. But, like, I never understood. I'm like, man, how are you guys, like, destroying your life like this? And, like, you know, I started out, like, I just started taking too many than the doctor was prescribing me. Right. And then, like, you know, I would run out before the month was over, and then I would have to buy them off the street. And then before you know it, I was running out in a week and have to buy them off the street. And I remember the first time, and, like, at this point, I had, like, a small landscaping company. We're doing pretty well on the cannabis, and, like, it's not affecting me because, like, I'm being prescribed them. But I remember the first day I was like, you know, this is getting a lot of control. I've been on these for a while, and I'm like, I'm just not going to take them, right? And I remember I went to sleep that night, and I woke up in the middle of the night, and, like, I felt like I had the flu. right? Like I'm kicking, sneezing, like I was in proper withdrawal, but I didn't understand like quite what was happening yet. And it was because I didn't have the drugs. And then I went and found some oxy, and then like the withdrawals went right away. And then then began the endless cycle of just taking oxy to not be sick. Because if I was deathly sick, I couldn't take care of any of my affairs. So I really just had to keep doing it so I could get everything done. You know what I mean? And I didn't really see the adverse effects at first because like I had a little bit of money. You know what I mean? So like I still had stuff. Like I still had the house, still the car, still had ways to make money. But I was just spending a lot of money on the pills. But like it wasn't affecting me quite yet. I hadn't thrown everything out.
Was your cannabis business a legitimate business in the sense where like you guys were treating it like a real business? Because it sounds like you invested in a landscaping company from that. And
yeah.
You know, it wasn't like you were just doing like a small time thing, not saying you were doing a big time thing, but
like a good medium thing. Yeah. So no, we were just real ragtagging. It was still in Ohio too. So like legalization hadn't came through. And that's actually a really good point. It leads me to the next saga of it, right? Mm-hmm. So the pill, I was getting really bad on the pills, and we decided we wanted to go legit, right? So Michigan is just north of us, particularly Detroit, right? And a lot of people don't know Michigan was like the shining house on the hill for cannabis, at least for the Midwest back then, right? And they had really lax laws even compared to like California and Colorado back then. So at least back then was medicinal in Michigan. You could grow 12 plants in any phase. You know what I mean? If you had your thing. And the racket was like, all right, so I could grow my 12 plants. We get you up to the doctor. We get your script wrote for you, and we could sign over your rights, and I become your caretaker, right? So now I could grow my 12 plants and your 12 plants. And you could do that up to, I believe it was like 5 patients. So technically, legally, you grow 72 plants in any phase.
And how much revenue does one plant bring in?
That depends. Depends on a lot. You know what I mean? How big do you get it? How big? So we always ran soil. Like a lot of people are on the aeroponics and hydroponics. We always just had big soil pots. And in the Midwest, you get like these real deep cut basements. I'm sure you have them like here in Connecticut, but like all the older houses have basements with just concrete that run off to a drain. So, I mean, it depends how long you veg it out. So like how long you keep it in the cycle before you kick it over to flower. You know,
when did you start using your proceeds from that and, you know, your business to fund your opiate addiction?
I mean, the whole time. But at that point, I was making enough money to cover it and like cover my drug addiction and keep myself afloat, you know, with a place to live and a car and stuff.
Did any of your partners realize what was going on?
Yeah, they started to. Right, I kept it real cool for a while, and how my old best friend / business partner found out is we went out to Vegas for my birthday, and I had like hidden a bunch of pills like in my stuff, you know, to take through TSA. I put like 2 in a pocket here, 1 in a sock, 1 in a, you know what I mean, like spread it out all over all my stuff. And we went out to Vegas for my birthday, and I don't know, it was like 4 or 5 days, and then by day 3, I had used all the pills I had taken, right, and I was just like completely like in horrible withdrawal. And they're like, what the fuck's wrong with you, bro? You know what I mean? And that's when my partner found out. And then we get back, and then I was like, all right, I'm going to make a big life change. I was like, we'll go to Detroit. Right. Well, my partner's like, yeah, let's go to Detroit. And my idea was like, we could try to set this up and start getting legitimate with it. I could get away from, you know, the drugs, and we could start all over. But if you want to get clean off opiates, Detroit is not like the best place to go get off dope. You know what I mean? And that like started the whole new saga. And we were up in Detroit for a while. And like we did really well. We ran one big round. And I met these guys, and I really like Detroit. Detroit has its own personality, like no other city that I could explain, right? And this was in 2013, so that's like when the city filed for bankruptcy, and like Kwame Kilpatrick, he was like a mayor that got indicted for like embezzling a bunch of funds. He was sent to prison. A lot of the street lights weren't working, so Detroit was like the Wild West for the cannabis industry. You know what I mean? Because people just there's no enforcement, so like everyone's up there just blowing houses and blowing warehouses out. And so I ended up getting in with these dudes, these guys and by this time, so. Let me backtrack. Am I messing all this up? Am I rambling?
You're doing good, man.
I'm doing okay?
Yeah. We're in 2013.
We're in 2013. And we had started, I had a buddy and we were going down to South Florida, like during the pill mill things or whatever. And we would go down there, and I'd never like went to the doctor myself, but like I sponsored a person who was in with the doctor. So like I covered the rental car and all the money. And I remember we went all the way down there, and there was like, we went to the doctor's office, and it was like boarded up, and they had like yellow stickers on it. The doctor had been raided. So we drove all the way down there, and we drive all the way back to Ohio, extremely dope sick. And that was my first time trying heroin. You know what I mean?
Wow.
And heroin's like, and like I was like, I'm not going to use needles. You know what I mean? I'm not a junkie. They're like, oh, you could sniff it just like how you sniff your pills. You know what I mean? And it instantly made sense because you could do $300 worth of oxy, or you could do $20 worth of dope. Heroin, right? And I'm like, oh, well, this makes financial sense. Like, yeah, this heroin thing sounds like a good idea, right? And then I'd found a guy, Detroit, at least in our region, Detroit was always known for like, because like the Canadian border's right there. And a lot of stuff comes across from Canada. And like Detroit was always known for having like really good dope. You know what I mean? And then, yeah, we had a really big round being like, we had you know what I mean? We grew a good crop. And then that was like the biggest amount of money I'd ever had at like one singular time off a round. And then within probably 2 months, I just spent it all.
On dope?
On dope.
Hmm. Wow. Yeah. That's crazy that if the doctor wasn't closed that day, you might have never had a dope addiction.
I'm sure it would have happened eventually because like that was like a trend. Because I don't know, how old are you?
29.
Oh, so we're not too far apart. But like there was like the heyday in South Florida, like everyone was driving down there. And like it's funny, like you used to go up like 75 going up into Georgia, and they especially my region, they would call us pillbillies. Like hillbillies that would come to Florida to come do pills. And they had a big sign on 75 as you're getting near the Georgia border that said, "Pillbillies go home." So like it was on a downward track anyway. It was all eventually going to get shut down regardless.
Yeah, I'd heard from stories about sponsors from guests, exactly what you were just explaining, how you would sponsor someone to go down there mm-hmm. and they would get their pills and, mm-hmm. and whatnot. And it was just a revolving door. Mm-hmm. So now you're on heroin in 2013.
Yep.
How old are you at that time?
24, 25, I guess.
And you don't have any relationship with your family?
No, not really. Like I would tap in with my dad every now and then. Like, but he had no idea how bad he was. I'd only see him a few times a year, you know. And I would always I was real good at cleaning up. You know, if you go get a haircut, brush your teeth, trim your beard, put on some nice clothes, and act like you got it halfway together, I was pretty good at acting like everything was all right.
What happens to your businesses?
So I decide, I fucked everything up. So like when you're really high on, when you're on those hard drugs, like I can't manage stuff. So like I'm not answering phone calls. I can't pay insurances on cars. You know, I lost my license. You know what I mean? Like I'm driving around trying to drive, a work truck, new landscape. I don't have a license. I'm getting pulled over. You know what I mean? Like the people I would have like come work for me, like I was getting them high and they were just like not showing up. And then, I wasn't paying electric bills. I was just real sloppy, you know.
And did your business partner kick you out of the weed business at this point?
No. So we're in Detroit, right? And I eventually I was like, I need some help, right? So that was the first time I went to treatment, and over in a place called Battle Creek, Michigan. It's over kind of near Chicago, Michigan. And that was my first time I went to treatment. And like during this time, I noticed there was like a lot of law enforcement like heat coming down on us. Cause like, so we would grow it in Michigan, like technically kind of legally in a gray area, but we would just take it right back to Ohio and sell it back on the black market. You know what I mean? So granted, it might've been kind of being grown in like a legal aspect, but by the time we were trying to turn it back into money, like we were doing it in a state where it wasn't legal. And plus we were crossing into a different state, right? And I'll save the long story, but a lot of people I was working with in Columbus, they started getting in a lot of trouble, right? And like they would get caught, and then like there would be rumors of like, oh, people are telling on you and stuff. And I didn't pay attention. I'm like, I'm not doing any, like I'm not out here like killing people, not out here driving like Mercedes. Like I'm just a guy in a work truck, just growing and selling a little bit of pot. But I didn't realize like, and especially like when you start crossing the line of like, doing the Florida trips, You know what I mean? Like you start crossing the line. And when I noticed like something wasn't right is I got pulled over and I didn't have a driver's license, right? And then like cops in Columbus, if you don't have a driver's license, a lot of time they're just like, they'll cut you a ticket and say, don't drive your car, make sure you show up to a court date. And I'm sitting there waiting on this process, and there's like a cop car behind me. I'm watching it in my rear view, and then I see like a red pickup truck pull up behind the cop car. I'm like, you know what the fuck is this shit? And like this dude hops out of the car, and he's like short, and he has like gauges in his ear, and he has like glasses, and he looks like a rocker, like a dude you see at like a Sublime show or something, right?
Yeah.
Like, what is this? And then he like pulls, and he has like the little sheriff badge like on a thing, and he was like an undercover cop. And I'm like, why isn't an undercover cop showing up to a traffic stop? And like he now becomes part of it, and I'm just like, something's off. And they find like a small amount of money, like $2,800 or something. You know what I mean? Like nothing too crazy, and they actually confiscate it from me. I'm like, right, like, you know, I'm a landscaper. I can prove where this come from. And, you know, it's just real weird. And like, it wasn't the drugs. Like I started noticing like, just patterns of stuff, you know what I mean? Like, people sitting out front of the house, and like, they're really good, right? Because, they were trying to see if I was slipping. So I ended up having to call him, and they were obviously going to release the money back to me, this $2,800 little money or whatever. And he's like, oh, we'll come to you. I was like, oh, I'll just come to the police department. He's like, no, we'll come to you. So I had him like meet me streets over, and they like pull up in like a gold Cadillac, same dude with the gauges, and another dude with like big earrings. Like these guys look like, you know, I would sell weed to these any and then they're driving around in a gold Cadillac. So I really started noticing stuff like that. We had this idiot that you know, was like part of this little thing we were doing, and he got in a lot of trouble, and then like he got all high on Xanax and told his little partner one day, like, you know, I told on them, I broke down everything I know about them, and like his little friend called me and was like telling me like, you know, listen, everything that he knows they now know, but we didn't let him know everything, so it wasn't too crazy. So we started having a lot more attention like that. You know what I mean? Started getting pulled over a lot more often than you should have. So that was another reason I went to Detroit, and then, and then lost all my money. And then I went to rehab. And, you know, when I was in rehab, I still wasn't ready. I just wanted to get off the hard drugs. You know, I just wanted to quit. I was done being dope sick and like giving out all my money, right? Like I didn't want to stop smoking weed and getting drunk, because that's what I like to do. I like to go to the bar, and I like to sit around and smoke weed. And then I was in the cannabis industry. So it's like, I can't, you know, not get away from it. I just wasn't ready yet. And then, you know, it was good. Like I realized like I was going to have to make a change, and I was like, you know, I think I could do this. And then I made like the golden rule when you go to rehab. I made the first mistake is you don't fall in love. Right. And I met a girl in rehab, and I ended up pretty much getting kicked out of the rehab with her. And then, yeah.
Did you end up marrying her or no?
No.
Okay, so this was just a temporary girlfriend.
Temporary girlfriend. Yeah.
And what happened to her? Like, did you guys move somewhere?
Yeah. We went down to West Palm Beach.
That's how you ended up in Florida?
This is my second time in Florida.
Okay.
Yeah.
This currently is your second time? So that was your first time, like, officially moving there? Moving there, yeah. Do you go back into addiction after leaving with her?
So she really wanted to stay clean, but I didn't want to stop smoking weed. So, like, at least for me, like it's all or nothing. Like if I'm going to smoke weed, like we might as well drink. If we're going to be out on Friday night drinking, we might as well do some blow, right? It's like, you know, peanut butter and jelly, you know? So like all my weed bone is connected to my alcohol bone is connected to my heroin bone. Like, you know what I mean? Sooner than later, I'm going to end up back on another hard substance. This is how my brain's worried. You know what I mean? This is how it's wired. And me and her stay together for a little while. And then we break up because, you know, I'm an unstable person at this point. And then I go back to Columbus, Ohio. And at this point, like my reputation has been like kind of ruined. Everyone's like, oh, he's a crackhead. He's a junkie. He used to like be up here and have this and do this. And now, like, you know, I'm back at, you know, a family member's house, you know, pretty much living in a spare bedroom with absolutely nothing. And like I was really defeated. And then like, you know, I thought like the heat was off of me or whatever, but like, I just like, I knew that they were still interested in me. And like the thing that my final straw, there was this police officer, right? And they were serving a warrant on this dude, and they got into a shootout, and like the dude they're serving the warrant on like shot and killed one of the police officers, right? And they were having like a ceremony downtown, you know, like how they bring like all the cop cars out and the SWAT, like a
funeral service,
like a big funeral service, and all the, you know what I mean. And I remember I was just walking downtown one day, and you know, at this, and it was such a downfall because like, you know, I felt on the top of the world, and you know, I used to make decent money, and I'm literally taking the bus to go like work in a kitchen downtown, right? But anyway, I'm going to work, and I'm like, is there a parade or something today? And I'm out there, and I'm right on Marconi Boulevard where the like police headquarters is, and they're having the procession just as I'm walking downtown, right? Like, oh, this is crazy, because that helicopter I was telling you about, like it's flying like street level, and they got like the, you know, the hearse, and like the SWAT truck is like a police funeral procession. Like, oh, this is pretty interesting, you know what I mean? And I remember there was this, like, you could tell he was copy, like he was in his suit and stuff. And I remember I was standing there, and like I was watching him out of my peripherals, and he like looked at me, looked away, and then like double looked at me, right? And I know I didn't like have a warrant or anything, like I wasn't wanted for anything, but it was like definitely a sign of recognition. And like I'm still watching him out of my peripheral, and like he tapped the guy next to him, like, and they were like, I knew they were talking about me. I'm like, why would they be talking about me? You know what I mean? And I knew it was time to get out of there. So like I had moved to, you know, my fucking, I'm ruined. All my friends and like my whole social group, like, you know, where I used to have like some sort of little bit of status or whatever, they all think I'm a worthless junkie, and I'm actually back on heroin, right? And I barely have any money, and I just want to get the fuck out of Columbus, Ohio. So I literally go to the public library, and I hop on Google, right? And I'm just like the easiest place for an American to get a work visa.
That's what you Googled?
That's what I Googled. I'm like, I'm just gonna get out of the country.
That was drastic.
And New Zealand popped up, right? And to any young people out there traveling, like I like helping people. I've actually helped a few people out with this. New Zealand has a reciprocal, like a visa that goes both ways with the U.S. is called the work and holiday visa, and you could go live and work and travel in New Zealand for 1 year. And I was like, all right, shit. And like I filled out the application on like the New Zealand immigration website, and I was like done in 5 minutes. And then within like 3 weeks, they granted me this visa to go to New Zealand to work for a year. Like I couldn't believe it. I thought it was a joke, right? But mind you, I'm still on heroin and I have no money. So I'm like, how the fuck am I going to pull this off, right? So I'm working at this little diner or whatever, and I end up I found some old dusty equipment in my best friend's house, and I'm like, yeah, we're gonna run one more round, right? You know what I mean? So I could go with like some money, and we ended up running around, ended up spending it all on dope, and I bought a plane ticket like 6 months out, right? And my goal was like to save X amount of dollars to like fly to New Zealand with, but I ended like between the dope addiction and then just being an idiot, I only ended up saving like $1,800. So like I'm about to literally move to the other side of the world with $1,800 to my name, right? And I'm still on dope. So I literally show up at the airport to fly to the other side of the world, and I'm like, all right, I'm done taking heroin. So I literally get on this airplane to fly to New Zealand, withdrawing from heroin. I was like, all right, this is it. I'm gonna like change my life. You know what I mean?
And you had no job lined up. You just have the visa, but no job.
Just have the visa.
Wow.
Yeah, like I'd done some like research, like backpacking culture is real big, like in other parts of the world, like Europe and stuff. So like I scout out like hostels and like ways I could find work, but I didn't have anything like set in stone.
Why do you think in your mind you needed to go to a different country to escape the issues you were having? Why couldn't you find that here?
It's the old geographical cure thing. You think like, oh, I'll go somewhere else and like everything's gonna be fine, right? But like, you know, at the end of the day, I moved to different states and cities and continents and countries, but at the end of the day, I still bring myself with all my bullshit. You know what I mean?
So what ends up happening?
Oh, so I ended up in New Zealand. So the girl I met in rehab, we had got back together. Like we had broken up, and like a month before we get back together. I'm like, oh, why don't you come to New Zealand with me? Right? So it's already a shit show on wheels. But I go and I'm there like 30 to 60 days like before she does, right? Because she has to like finish up some things. Then she's flying out. And like literally there was like no transition or no like easing into it. I went from being on heroin to just being like a horrible, pretty much alcoholic. Like the moment because I showed up and like I didn't have no heroin, so I just started drinking real heavy, right? And like it's a shit show from the beginning, man. And like I feel kind of bad about it, but like, you know, I go and I stay at this backpackers hostel, and like most of these younger people, you know what I mean? They're like real backpackers. They're like gap year students, like, you know, from high school to university, or they're like young professionals, you know, taking a break from their career or something. They're like trying to travel the world and like take pictures. And like, I'm just over there like some washed up fucking heroin addict who fucked up in the weed industry, trying to like run away from my past and like this perceived law enforcement drama I got going on back home. And like, I don't like fit in too well. And I fly into Auckland, New Zealand. It's like their biggest city, right? And I stay pretty kind of, not quite, but it'd be like staying in like Manhattan, like in the city center, like real busy. And I'm staying at this hostel, and I immediately like start having problems. And what do? I find the people just like me, right? They look different. They might speak different languages or have different accents, but I found the troublemakers like immediately, right? And like, at least with like opiates, like if I get high, I just want to go like hide in a dark room and be left the fuck alone. But like when I start drinking real heavy, I want to be like out and about, like around people, like causing trouble, all this crazy shit, right? And then, you know, I took in like this knife with me. And like knives are illegal. And like, you know, you hear about like England and London, like the stabbings, like you're not allowed to have certain types of knives in some of these countries, right? We're talking about gun control. They have knife control.
Like a certain size,
like
right?
a certain size, can't be a switch, can't. So like I have this knife, and then like within like 2 weeks, like I'm out there like almost getting into knife fights with fucking homeless people from Auckland, New Zealand. You know what I mean? I acquired this like tiny little piece of shit van, and I ended up getting a DUI in it. You know what I mean? So like I'm in a different country already, like involved in their criminal justice system, right? And it's a trip. Like I had this van, right? And I was like speeding down the highway, and their cop cars are different than us, right? And like everything's on the opposite side of the road, even the steering wheel's on the opposite side. And like there's this Subaru in front of me, like this blue Subaru in front of me going like really slow. Like, man, what the fuck? So I like speed around this Subaru. It was a cop car. Cause like I'm used to like Crown Vics and Explorers and stuff. So they pull me over, and like I ended up going to court in New Zealand for a DUI because of my drinking. And you know, that's a whole nother, like, you know, the judges over there wear like George Washington wigs.
Like in England.
Like, same in England, right? And what's really crazy is like, you know, how you go to approach the bench, there's like these little flappy doors, like, you know, waist high. And anytime you go into that section, like in front of the judge, you have to bow. And then as you turn around and leave, you have to turn around and bow again.
I think it's like that in Canada too. They wear like those weird outfits or whatever.
Right.
Yeah, the weird court outfits.
Yeah.
Wow.
And you know, and then like I'm in this hostel, and like I remember I'm surprised I didn't get in so much more trouble. And like the drinking just kept bringing me problems. Like I was bringing problems, and like this dude tried to stab me with like a broken mug or whatever. And like we had gotten into an argument, and he like pushed me, and I just kind of like pushed him back, and he like disappeared, right? And I'm at like the desk of the hostel trying to work this thing out with this dude, and he was drunk, and he comes like running up this stairway with this like broken cup. He's like a Brazilian dude, and he's like swinging it at me, right? And like I run, and like, you know how the phone booth dividers are like made of glass or whatever? So I'm trying to get away from this guy, and I run through like 3 different layers of these like these glass phone booth protectors, and it shatters everywhere. And long story short, like we end up in a wrestling match, and he like cut like, you know, the hoodie I was wearing, but he didn't get me, and I like get the upper hand on him. And like I said, I'm not like an MMA fighter. I'm not a tough guy or whatever, but I ended up like making him unconscious. Long story short. So now I'm like, dude, I'm in like a different country, and like this guy is now unconscious from like me defending myself, and like the cops show up. But lucky enough, it was self-defense, and it was all on camera. But anyway, the girl shows up, you know, like a month and a half later, and like, you know, I'm drunk and belligerent every day. It doesn't last that long, right? So I literally break up with this girl in a different country, and then I'm like, all right, well, I got to figure this out. So I literally I hitchhike. New Zealand's made up of 2 islands, the North in the South Island, and we were a knuckling. So I ended up hitchhiking all the way down to the South Island with the intention of finding work. And there was a point where I showed up in this town and I had $0. I had no job and I had no place to live. And I just like had the fucking pack on my back. You know what I mean? And like, it just kept getting me down and down. I ended up wiggling out of it. I got like a job on a farm and I got one paycheck. And then I ended up getting steady in employment. And then when I'm over there during all this, my dad dies. Right? So like, I'm in a random country and I can't get home. So I don't make it home for my dad's funeral. You know, this girl I've been dating for a long time, and you know, like I have nothing bad to say about her. I really liked her. I'm broken up with her, like, you know, and everything I tried to build, you know, with the cannabis and like businesses and stuff, I fucked it all up, and I'm like on the other side of the world, and like I'm in a really, really low place. You know what I mean? And you know, I find a steady job, and then I was like, well, there's really no reason to go home now. You know, and this is where I kind of start growing, but I don't, right? This is when I start enjoying more, like trying to get more out of the experience of being overseas. And I ended up getting like a little kitchen job, and I stayed there for like 6 months and saved up money. And like my year was coming to the end of the visa, right? Like the end of the year was coming up. But, you know, I was still drinking real heavy, but I wasn't being as destructive. And I was like, well, I'm not going home. And I ended up saving a few dollars, like $12,000, nothing too crazy. And I was like, all right, well, I'm going to go to Asia. All right, I'm going to go to this backpacker trail. And then Australia has a visa program just like New Zealand where you could apply for it and you could live and work in Australia up to a year. And if you do regional work, you could stay for 2 years. So I was like, I'm going to go to Asia. I'm going to spend all my money. And when I have like $1,000 left, I'll then show up to Australia and then like remake the money and then figure it out. Right. And then things started to get better. Like still drinking a lot, still being belligerent some of the time. But like I really started having like a big world view. Like when I went to Asia, like I showed up in Thailand. Right. And then spent some time in Thailand. And I ended up getting a job in living in Vietnam.
Oh, wow.
You know, and like at this point, like New Zealand started to knock down a lot of those barriers of like what we're taught to believe about the world and like our view of our position in it. You know what I mean? You know how we're always like, oh, this is the greatest country on earth. And there's a lot of other countries I think they're the greatest country on earth. You know, there's a lot of nice places. I remember I was in New Zealand, right? And I was in a hostel and these two German girls came in and they were like all tan. It was like winter then. And I'm like, oh, where are you guys coming back looking all tan? It's the middle of winter. And they're like, oh, we're coming back from Vietnam, yeah? I'm like, you were where? You know what I mean? Oh, my God, it's like such a dangerous country. Because like I'm thinking of, you know, like our history with
the Vietnam War.
And they're just like, yeah, no, you're an idiot. Like it's a really safe and awesome, cheap country to go to. And I finally realized like I needed something to do because I was in Asia. I made my way through like Thailand and Cambodia. And I was like just partying real hard. And like, you know, which is fun for like the first few weeks, but I was like, I really need to do something. I need a purpose to wake up for in the morning. You know, I'm sleeping until noon. I'm staying up all night. The drugs and drinking are so cheap there that, you know what I mean? It's really hard to spend all your money. So I was like, I'm going to become a scuba diver instructor. Right. And I found this place. I'd scuba dived once before in Florida, and they had this thing called a 0 to Hero program, where they could take you from like your open water certification all the way till like a dive instructor, right? And it was like an internship. So like if I worked there and stayed there, they would get me up to instructor and then offered me employment after.
And you're sober at this point? Or?
No, still drinking real heavy. Dude, I got so lucky, like, and I feel bad like disrespecting other people's country, but like it's just so lax over there. Like I didn't get pulled over. I got stopped by the police in Vietnam, and like I had a motorbike, like a 125cc, whatever. And like I could barely like keep it up, let alone ride it. And the police stopped me. You know what I mean? And you just hand them $20 and they'll go away type thing.
Was there a lot of addiction issues out there, like fellow addicts?
Yeah.
Compare like the addiction in America that you were surrounding yourself with to over there in the different countries.
So I did meet a few people just like me. Right. And but a lot of it out there is alcohol. Like people just go to party. And it's like, oh, it's part of the experience. You're supposed to like go and like drink heavy. every day, all day, and act stupid. And like that sounds like what we're supposed to do, and like that's our definition of fun. But if you really look at it, like, is it? You know what I mean?
Yeah. So what happens next? Do you get certified and you start working full time out there?
Yeah.
And how long do you stay out there?
Yeah, I was in Vietnam about 6 months. 6 months. And like I got the whole immersion experience. Like, I had the job, I went and rented an apartment. You know what I mean? I got a little motorcycle, had a little job. So like I really, I went and lived in an area away from the tourists. So like it was real interesting, super interesting. It's super cheap too. Like, I had a little bit of savings, but like my daily budget was like $10. And you could like get your 60-cent pack of cigarettes, your breakfast, all for $10, your breakfast, your lunch, your dinner, and a few beers. So like I was just kind of living on that high life. But and what's funny is like, especially now, like what's going on in the news, like I was working illegally, right? And then like, in the news now, like people are talking about undocumented immigrants. Like I've seen it from the other side of the spectrum as well,
Were they hard on immigrants over there?
No, not at all. Not at all. And I mean, like, you got to think I would work 10-hour days, make like $30. So I was like making actual wages. And then like there's ways around it. Like we do something called like a visa run. So like you go on a tourist visa, and if you had a 90-day tourist visa, when that 90th day would come up, you would literally just like, you could take a bus to the Cambodian border, literally get off the bus, get on another bus and just cross and like get another 90-day visa. You know what I mean?
How do you end up back in the U.S.?
So I was ended up going to Australia for 2 years.
Oh, you did the full 2 years in Australia.
Mm-hmm.
That must have been an experience.
Yeah, it was really cool. Really cool. And like,
we got a lot of Australian listeners on the podcast.
Oh, do we?
Yeah, we have there are they're our second biggest country of listeners.
Is there?
It's US, Australia, Canada, and then so on.
And so on. I love Australia. Aussies are cool, man. Aussies are super cool. I got a hell of experience. So I ended up in a city called Perth. It's like way on the West Coast, right? And there's supposed to be like a lot of mining jobs I kept being told about. And I show up and like, I don't know if it was like a bad season or the economy just kind of couldn't find a job. So I ended up like hitchhiking all the way across like the southern continent of Australia. And then there's this place called the Nullarbor Plain. It's like the longest, straightest road on earth or whatever. And I ended up finding this guy with his dog and his boats. And I ended up in Melbourne. And I was in Melbourne's a big city. I compared to like Chicago. Maybe, I mean, like different flavor, but like same kind of, I guess. And I actually ended up finding a junkie. And I actually ended up getting strung out in Melbourne, Australia temporarily. Like I was running out of money and I found a job in a cafe just like washing cups. And there was like this waiter and we started talking or whatever. And he's like, oh, yeah. Me and my family used to take in travelers. He's like, oh, you come like stay on my couch if you want to. Like, all right, so we'll go and stay on his couch. He ended up being like a junkie. So me and this dude ended up like, just fucking sitting around getting high for like 3 weeks. But then I realized like I was getting, like it was going to get bad again. So like I left. I ended up going to this place called Darwin, which is like in the Northern Territory. And then like part of this thing to like extend your visa, you have to do like regional work. So like a place where Aussies they have like a labor shortage. So I went to this place called the Northern Territory, and to put the Northern Territory into perspective, it's like 4 or 5 Texases with the population of like 250,000 people. So it's like super desolate, and they have their like indigenous out there, like the indigenous Australians. So like, I was up there and like, I got involved in their culture, but the alcohol kept messing with me, right? So like I was at a job for like 6 months, but like alcohol, like I was just sloppy, and I ended up getting fired from a job because of my drinking. Like I was drinking on the job. And then ultimately what got me fired was like there was this bit, like I worked on am I rambling?
No, you're good.
No, am I good? To bring me in if you got to bring me in.
No, you're good, yeah.
So like I was working at this place called Mataranka, right? In middle of fucking nowhere, bro. And it has these thermal pool springs. That's why people come there. And the guy that I worked for, he owned like a gas station, a pub, and like a homestead where like people would camp and bring their campers if they're traveling like across the outback. And I was like this dude's like gopher or whatever. So like, I'd be like supplying his stores, I'd be cleaning up all his properties. And like during the busy season, he would have a live band like play every night for all the campers like in this little stage area. And then like this, long story short, me and like the lead singer of the band ended up getting into it, and things got like physical. So they ended up firing me. They're like, you got to go. They're like, we really appreciate you. Like, you've done a lot of good work around here, but pretty much told me my drink is out of control. And like, good luck, right? And then I ended up going to the East Coast. For the Australian listeners, I ended up in this small town called Port Douglas, and it's just north of Kansas in far north Queensland. And it's actually the port where Steve Irwin left out of the boat when he got barred by the thing, right?
Oh, that was there where he died?
No, so the port he left out of,
okay,
that's where it happened. And mind you, now I'm a scuba diver instructor. So my main goal for all of this was like, all right, so I'm going to go to the I'm going to do my commitment for the visa, and I'm going to go work on the Great Barrier Reef, right? And I ended up getting a job like doing day trips out to the Great Barrier Reef, like just like leading tourists around. And I ended up finagling my way onto like this to this research boat, right? And there's these starfish called the Great Crown of Thorns starfish. They're these massive big blue starfish, and they eat coral. They like suck the polyps out of it, right? And they're supposed to be there, but they're breaking out in like crazy amount of numbers. And Queensland is like the biggest sugarcane producer in the world, and like a lot of nutrients run off to the reef. A lot of reasons why the reef's not doing too well. But the government literally paid like a few companies to go out and eradicate these. So like we would go out on a boat for like 2 weeks at a time. And then we would literally just dive down and try to find all these starfish. And then if we found an outbreak, we'd literally just like, we had these like tanks with like a big prod, and we would just like inject them with pretty much vinegar, right? But this was starting to get really good for me, right? Because every time we go out to sea, I couldn't drink. I couldn't even smoke cigarettes. So like it started really, like, you know what I mean? I started balancing it out quite a bit more. And like I felt like I was getting it under control a little bit, but deep down, I really wasn't. You know what I mean? So like I learned a lot, met a lot of really cool people. And mind you, I've told you my backstory now. So like I almost feel like I'm just a wolf in sheep's clothing, right? If these people really knew, that they just know me as like, I'm this American that was traveling and I just show up on their boat and like I'm a good worker. If only they have no idea what I'm actually coming from, you know, because I don't like tell people, you know, like, you know, I used to be a junkie and I fucked my whole life up, and I'm actually outrunning some problems back where I'm from. You know what I mean?
You're like an international junkie.
I'm like, please don't put that on my fucking, dude, I swear to God, don't put that on my thumbnail. Junkie. Please don't do that.
You know, it's interesting how ambitious you were for being an addict.
Yeah.
Like you had goals.
Yeah, always have.
I never really met too many former addicts that did have a lot of goals. They were kind of just like stagnant, not really knowing what they wanted to do.
Yeah. I've always felt like a big pull out into the world. Like I know there's something out there, you know what I mean? Like I could feel it. I just don't know what it is. And I don't know. But anyway, so these people wanted to, and it's crazy because like, especially what's going on, I'm not making this political or whatever, but like what's going on now with like the immigration crackdown, right? So this employer I was working for, they wanted to, I was on a temporary work visa. It was coming expired. There's a visa sponsorship for residency. And he was willing to go through the process where he would sponsor me to work for him. And after X amount of years, I would be like a permanent resident in Australia, right? I was like, this is it, man. Like I never have to go back to Columbus, Ohio. Never have to be around those people again. You know what I mean? Like this is like my fighting chance. Granted, like my drinking still like not doing too well, but I'm like, this is my out. You know what I mean? I never have to go back. I made it out. Because a lot of people in Ohio are stuck. A lot of people everywhere are stuck. You know, and then around that same time, there was a prime minister that was getting voted into office. His name was Scott Morrison, and he literally was running with the undertones of "Make Australia Great Again," right? And this was before Trump got in office this time, and he got elected, and he tightened up the same thing that's going on here. He like made the process for getting these more permanent visas harder. So like I fucked up, and then if I didn't leave, I was going to be there illegally.
So they kicked you out.
They didn't kick me out. I left before my visa expired. Like I contemplated staying illegally, but it's an island. So like if you're there illegally, you might be able to like last a while. But if I ever had to like come back to the United States, for the moment I went to an airport to fly internationally, like I'd be smoked. So like, what's the point of building a whole life and then like, you know, being kicked out? But anyway, I'm like, I lick my wounds and I fly back to Columbus, Ohio. And I'm not even back. It is my first time back in the United States in like 3.5, almost 4 years. And the very first night I get back, I overdose on fentanyl. Yeah. Because the game's changed a bit. Cause like I've been out, like, you know, the dope, the real heroin had still been around, like the Mexican black tar and and like the China white, like it was still heroin. So like and like I would check the US media and like I would see like all this fentanyl stuff's making a way around. And like I remember like fentanyl from like the patches or like in hospital, but like this is like a whole new thing. So like I show back in literally first night.
What was it that attracted you to it? Was it like wrong place, wrong time? Like someone gave it to you, or do you just like saw it? Like what in you?
I had a reservation. I was like, I couldn't, like, it was crazy. I didn't want to leave Australia in like this little life, but I couldn't like wait to get back to do some opiates. Just like it's that disease of addiction. You know what I mean? And I just knew it. Like the whole, like literally the moment I had to leave, like I knew I had to leave and like I bought a ticket a few weeks out. Like from that countdown, I was like, I can't wait to get back to Columbus and do some fucking dope. And like, what makes it even worse, I was driving a vehicle, right? And like, dude slid me some and like I snorted it, you know what I mean? And like, I'm used to doing like, you know, coke and fucking even like, you know, pain pill lines, not knowing like, you know, just a little bit of the shit could really do it. And like, you know, I do a line of the fentanyl and like I'm driving my buddies. I feel so bad too. I was like driving his brand new Buick and I'm like, huh. And then it's like when I got punched back in Juvie and I came to it like on a plane, like I come to it, I'm back in the back of an ambulance. You know what I mean? I'd like wrecked this car into a ditch and they had to like bring me back to life, man. And then that started a whole new thing as well, right? So now I'm back in Columbus and I got like all these experiences and like I know what my potential is and I know what I could do. And I'm back in Columbus, fucking Ohio, doing gutters, all strung out on dope. And it like I'm coming into the winter, so like everything's like gray and depressed and like it's the season of the sticks, so there's like no leaves on the fucking trees. And then like everyone I had left for those 4 years, like they're all worse off because now they're on the fentanyl. Like you know, a lot of people I used to respect and grow up, they're like real street zombies now because like, you know, the progression you leave for a gap. And then like, you know, a lot of the guys and like they tell you this when you're younger, right? Like back when they were trying to intervene when I was going to Juvie, like, oh, you need to stop hanging out with them friends. You guys are going to end up like X, Y, and Z, right? And you're just always like, oh yeah, not us. Like, you know, we're young. And then like, you know, here I am 31, and like it all came true. You know what I mean? Everyone dead of an overdose or like, you know, a car accident or violence around drugs, lengthy prison sentences or just dereliction. You know what I mean? And I couldn't believe it. And, you know, then I ended up back on the fucking fentanyl. And then, you know, I meet back with my old, and I'm just like super fucking defeated, right? And I was like, I'm not doing this. So I ended up reaching out to this boating company in the Caribbean to work on a boat. So thankfully I'm in Columbus a month and I escaped back out, you know, and once again, like you remember how I got on the plane to New Zealand withdrawing? Now I'm like leaving to go join a ship withdrawing in the Caribbean, right? And but I'm not as bad off as I had been, and I end up shaking the cobwebs out. I'm working on this boat for 2 months, and there's this girl. That's where, so like it's called a liveaboard. So like it's not fancy as a yacht, but it's like a charter. Like let's say you want to go diving for a week, right? You could book a charter on this boat, and all we do is like go around a few different islands throughout the Caribbean, and we dive all day, every day. And I would just like lead people out to show them shit. You know what I mean? And then they hired a purser. A purser's like handles the money, passports, money, like that position on the boat, like secretary almost. And me and her, not dating, we only known each other like 2 weeks, and I get her pregnant.
Oh, wow.
And I get her pregnant. And we're like, well, this sucks. We didn't say anything, but she like dives sometimes. So eventually she has to start saying something because, you know, diving and being under pressure could affect the baby. And, you know, so we'd work like 8 weeks on, and then like we took like 3 weeks off, and I would go to Puerto Rico because like we would get paid in cash, right? We'd have like, I mean, not like bricks of hundreds, but you know, like you have a few $1,000s, like 20s and 10s and shit. So I would fly to Puerto Rico and put it in a bank that's like connected to the US. And like me and her, we're trying to figure it out. Like, what are we going to do? You know what I mean? And as we're talking about this, like how we're going to tell the company, maybe I still work, get some money. She goes back home. They fire us both and like leave us kind of borderline stranded in Puerto Rico.
Why'd they fire you guys? Because of your relationship? Or?
Yeah, because of the relationship. They didn't say it,
But inferred it.
Inferred it. Like,
and are you sober at this point? Did the going and working there get you sober?
Off the hard drugs.
Okay.
But
still on the liquor.
Still on the liquor. Yeah. We'd only have one day off a week to drink, and then I would drink, and then like it started sliding back in because like I was like, all right, this is a good chance to like clean up. Just drink once a week, and that worked for a few weeks. Then like I would bring a bottle back, and then at the end of the night, like I would, you know what I mean? And then so I have this girl who I've only known for a few weeks, pregnant with my kid, and we're stranded in Puerto Rico, and I might have like $1,000 left to my name. You know what I mean? And she's from New Jersey, and I'm from, Columbus. I'm like, all right, here's what we'll do. You go back to Jersey. I'll go back to Columbus. We'll try to get some money together, and then we'll figure it out. All right? So I go back to Columbus. I'm like, I'm going to stay off the dope. I'm going to stay off the dope. I'm going to stay off the dope. First night back in Columbus, again, I overdosed on fentanyl. You know what I mean? And I'm like, shit. So, I'm real messed up. And then so at this point, I hadn't seen my mom in quite some time, quite a few years since right after I escaped that placement back in Columbus. I hadn't really seen her that much up until this point. But like I started talking to her overseas, like we would like, talk online and stuff. And I reach out to her. I'm like, can I come stay with you? And this is the first time I've like actually lived with a parent since I was probably like 14, 15 years old. So I show back to Columbus with my tails between my legs. And I keep telling myself like the addict mind is crazy because like I overdosed on the fentanyl, but that time like it didn't end up in an ambulance, just ended up like someone needed a Narcan me. And I told him like the addict mind, I was like, yeah, I'm going to stop before I've been doing it long enough until I start going in withdrawal. Right. So like I would be like, yeah, tomorrow I'm going to stop, and then tomorrow would come. Tomorrow I'm going to stop before like I start having withdrawal. Tomorrow. And then like next thing you know, I've just been on it every day for like 3 months. And then eventually just throw in the towel. You're like, fuck it, we're just going to ride this one out, right? And I fucking get back in with the guy I used to grow weed with, and then I end up back in Detroit, right? So here we are, Detroit 2.0, like thinking that what's the definition? Like someone said one time, like, the old saying, like definition of insanity is doing the same thing over and over and expect different results. The real definition of insanity is doing the same thing over and over and over, knowing the results and still doing it. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So I'm like, yeah, this is gonna fix it all again, and then I started getting more into like the trafficking aspect of it. Like we were growing a bit up in Detroit, but then like I would do the actually like driving from Detroit to Columbus thing. You know what I mean? So I was taking like some real fucking risks doing it. And once again, I got to the point where like my like how much I was making was more than the amount I was spending on dope, right? And then so I would go to New Jersey every few months, and like I'd leave her with some money. I felt like good about myself. You know what I mean? But really, I was just being a shitbag. And then one time I went out there, and like I was like able to like take like some Suboxone or like some medication to like help me not be sick when I'd be visiting her for a few days. But I started getting worse and worse and worse. And I go out there, and after my daughter's born, and like I'm still actively getting high, and like I'm laying on her couch, and like I'm holding my daughter. And I'm nodding out from the dope, and she sees it, and she like calls me out on it as someone rightfully should, right? And then she basically told me to fuck off, and then like I didn't see her or my daughter for like 2 years, and that was like the apple on the cake, right?
I never heard that one before.
The apple on the cake?
Yeah.
I'm nervous, Ian. I'm trying my best
No,
here.
you're killing it, man.
That was the fucking cherry on the pie.
Apple on the cake.
Apple on the cake.
I don't know who puts apple. Actually, there probably are apple cakes, right?
Yeah.
Like little bits of apple in the cake.
Yeah,
it's probably pretty good.
Yeah, if not, we can start it, man.
Or you could say apple on the pie.
Apple in the pie, right.
All right, so 2 years goes by. I'm not seeing your kid.
So, and then I go back to Columbus, and then like, we're doing pretty good, and then like I was a little late to the party this time, but then like we started getting involved in like the packs. Everyone knows about the packs now, right? So like when I was gone all those years, like that guy I originally started out growing the cannabis with, he stayed in it. He kept progressing, and like he kept building and building and building. So like he had like met people out in California. So like we were going out to California and like doing the whole LA, go up to the Bay thing. And, like sending shit back. Mm-hmm. And then like, oh, the fucking whole game changed. And it's crazy because I remember like back from the first time he put me in a house back in, you know, right after I got kicked out of the National Guard, and we thought we were balling because we were getting, you know, $4,000 a pound off of one 1,000 watt. And now there's like, you know, all this crazy shit like the cartridges and the distillate.
So and the deltas
and the
everything.
deltas and shit. It was like, man. But what's really crazy is we came the fuck back. When I came the fuck back, like he was telling me weed prices, like, you know, now there's like outdoors and depths and exotics and like there's all these like tiers of fucking weed, you know what I mean? And like he was telling me the prices on these fucking, like, you know what I mean? Like outdoor, you get a pound of decent outdoor weed without seeds from California for like $1,800. So what really happened, especially for indoor smaller growers, like unless you were growing the best, like you weren't even making a fucking profit. I mean, not a profit. I mean, it wasn't even worth doing it. You know what I mean? Like how low prices would go. Like back in the day, if you grew a pound of weed that did not have seeds, like you could fuck around somehow make $4,000 out of that pound. And now like, you know, you have to grow the best of the best to even get close to that number.
Because there's so much competition.
Because there's so much competition. Yeah. And, you know, and then we ended up, so me and this part, so really bad on it. And then I end up, and what's crazy is when you try to go legit, right, with this weed shit, what I found the problem is like when you find people to buy it, a lot of times, like people that have like 20, 30, 50, 60, $70,000 laying around in cash, usually, not all the time, but usually sometimes they're like doing something else besides the cannabis to like make that much money. So like I started getting involved in this dude and he was like involved in the crystal meth, like ice. He was selling ice, but he also wanted to do cannabis. So like I was coming around him and I'd never done the crystal meth before, right? And then like, you know, my daughter, you know, my daughter's mother doesn't want nothing to do with me. I'm back in fucking Columbus, Ohio again, bro, in my 30s. You know what I mean? Like, fuck, you know, I mean, I've told you everything before. And somehow I ended up like starting smoking meth. But I mean, at that point, like if you're already doing fentanyl, like what do
you got to lose?
What do you got to lose? Putting the apple on the pie, Ian, you know what I mean? And I'd always somehow managed to like keep it together on opiates-ish, you know what I mean? But the moment I started doing ice, that's like when the real collapse started to happen. And it was actually like, there was like a plateau, like I started doing it and like I was actually like ultra productive. Right? Like, damn, I'm getting a lot done here. And I'm like super good at it. And then eventually like you come around that peak and then you start crashing. You know what I mean? And like, at that point, like I was in full on criminality mode. So like, besides like, you know, a little bit of meth and then like doing the packs and trying to cultivate, like I was trying to like get in the fraud and shit. So I would set up like this laboratory, like have a few like laptops and some notebooks. And like, I'd stay up all night, like getting shit done. And like, I would be able to do it. And then, like before too long, like I was supposed to do all this work and it's 6 a.m. and I've beat off like 7 times and I'm like looking up dolphin migratory patterns in the Pacific Ocean. And I've done nothing for 8 hours and it just goes by like that. And then it really started crashing. And then like me and Buddy, we were going out to Oklahoma because like they opened up like the floodgates on some shit out in Oklahoma. And me and him ended up having a fallout. And long story short, we're not friends anymore. He accused me of stealing something, didn't steal anything. And I've been working with this guy for over a decade. Took it really insultive. He like threatened to shoot my sister's house up. Like some real crazy shit, right? Yeah. I was like, I've known you this long and you're gonna like, that's how we're gonna end it. Yeah. So now I don't have any of the cannabis money coming in and I'm like a full on fentanyl ice junkie, right? And then I start crashing and then I don't have a lot of money. And then it's so crazy how like you always look at like on TV, like superstar or like movie actors or athletes, you're like, damn man, they had a contract for like millions of dollars. How are they like, you know, I fucked up, broke, don't have anything. Like I get it. Why? And by no means was I anywhere close to their level, but like I know what it's like to have have everything you need, you know what I mean? And then it slowly just starts going away. And before you know it, like I didn't have the place where I lived anymore. You know what I mean? Moved out of my mom's, moved somewhere else, lost that place. So now I'm like staying in someone's house that has kids, like in the spare bedroom. Then before you know it, like I lose my car because I get pulled over. And then before you know it, like all my money just slowly starts chinking away. And then they don't want me living there anymore. And I remember I woke up, no, I didn't wake up because I'm smoking ice, right? But I come to it one morning and I realize, and it's just so crazy how it happened, that I don't have a car. I don't have any money. I don't have any way to make any money. And I have nowhere to go sleep tonight. And like, just like that, I was like, oh, I'm like officially a homeless drug addict. You know what I mean? And anyone from Columbus, like, you know, every side of town has like the druggier part of town where there's like a lot of homeless and drug activity. And Columbus is like the west side. They call it the Hilltop is the neighborhood. And then, you know, I literally just found myself wandering around homeless, and it just got real bad. And then like the wintertime happened, and I was literally living as like a homeless junkie on the streets of West Columbus, Ohio, and coming from everything like I've told you. And you always like see those people driving by the street, like, damn, man, how's he get there? Like, does he have a story? Was he just born like into the, like, you know, what in the, like, I've realized everyone has a story that's out there, and some may vary. Like if you would have seen me at my worst, like, you know, I started like, you know, my beard started growing out, my hair growing out, like my clothes were looking all shitty. I would have that like real feral look in my eyes, you know what I mean? And like, if you would have looked at me then, you would have had no idea that like I was working on a research boat on the Great Barrier Reef of Australia, or like I used to have a small business and, you know, run all this. And it was just real, it's real demoralizing, you know what I mean? And like, I don't even really like talking about it. And this went on for quite a few months, and it was really fucking cold. You know, and like I found this this abandoned Ford I don't know
dealership?
Taurus, an old like 90s Ford Taurus that had been abandoned in like this parking lot, and no one was coming back for it. So I was like, this is where I live now. So I was like literally just living out of like this abandoned Ford Taurus.
Wow.
And you know, it got really bad. In my like, oh shit moment, I need to change. So like I'd acquired like some Tide, you know, the shit you wash your clothes with. Like, you know, the big jugs, that's a bit of money, right? And I had two of them. I mean, you probably guess how I got them, but I had two of them, and I was trying to sell them, right? And it was night, it was snowing. I was at this like gas station corner store. This Mexican lady had pulled up. She had two kids in the back, and she was getting back in her car, and she was like halfway in her car, halfway in the door. And like, I'm like in her face, like forcibly trying to sell her this fucking laundry detergent. You know what I mean? And I just remember like I caught a glimpse of myself in the reflection in the window, and like I just saw my face in the window, and then like I saw like the fear in her eyes, and I look in the back seat and I see like her two children. They're like, I'm not like, you know, I'm not technically like robbing her by any means, but like I'm so forcibly trying to get her to buy this fucking laundry soap off me just so I could get high that And I saw it happening in like real time in the reflection, and it just tripped me out. Like I had these crazy bags under my eyes, and I looked feral, and that's crazy coming from what I came from. And then I knew it was good as hell, but it's something that's easier said than done to get help, right? Especially when you're getting high, just to not get sick. You know what I mean? And especially on the opiates, like you don't even get high anymore. You're literally just trying to make $20 to $50 more just so you won't be extremely dope sick. And that is your day every single day. And you're like, tomorrow I'm going to do something about it. But then tomorrow comes and you're so busy trying to make that 20 to 50 bucks that by the time the end of the night comes and you finally get that bag and you finally stop from being sick, you're like, okay, tomorrow. And the time just keeps on going, man. And finally a big winter storm came, and I used to go to this, like, it's called Jordan's Crossing. It's off like Hague Avenue. Anyone from Columbus knows where it's at. But the guy, he had his son was Jordan, and he had overdosed like this older guy, and like he like gives space heaters and blankets and food, and it's a food pantry, and they used to give out hot lunches every day. So I used to go over there, and every Wednesday they had a Mount Carmel like outreach hospital bus that came. Like people like come check on people, give Band-Aids or whatever. Fucking there's this lady named Karen, and Karen would always fucking you know, she'd be like, I could get you in the treatment. And I was like, no, can I borrow $20? She's like, no. And like, I'd always like, you know what I mean? And then one day I would just like, after that incident, I was like, Karen, can you like get me into some treatment? You know what I mean? And I was completely defeated. And You know, she helped me give me treatment. It took a few days. And you know what's crazy is she's like, all right, well, we're getting this place down the street here. I'm like, you need to get me as far away from this fucking shithole of a city. And it's crazy because, like, I love Columbus. It is a good town. Like, there's good parts of it. There's bad, like any city, right? And Ohio is one of those places, like, I could talk shit about it and other Ohioans could talk shit about it. But the moment, like, an outsider talks shit about it, then we're like, hey, don't talk about our state like that.
I feel like that's everywhere.
That's everywhere. And she's like, I get you, you know, here on this side of town. I'm like, you need to get me as far away from Columbus as you can. And they got me in this place called Toledo, Ohio. It's northwest corner.
Yeah, I've heard of Toledo.
Yeah, little old Toledo. And you know what's crazy, Ian, is like I've been going to this trap house ran by, let's say, an organization or a group of people, these guys. And they had like 2 or 3 in the neighborhood that ran 24/7, Christmas, New Year's, everything. And like I had decent credit with them. Right. But I never used it because, like, if I had the cash, and I was like, all right, I'm going to rehab today. I'm going to go ask for something on credit and then I'm just going to dip out. Right. And God damn it, I go and I knock on the door for the first time in a very long time. No one has any dope. And I thought that was one of my harass raw. But, you know,
you took it as a sign.
I took it as a sign. And, you know, I ended up, they ended up coming pick me up and, it took me to Toledo, Ohio, and I've been clean ever since.
What year was that? Did you get clean?
3 years ago.
Congratulations.
Yeah,
man.
thank you. I just celebrated 3 years.
Do you think going back to Ohio was always your downfall?
Yes and no. It's a big piece because people get clean in the hometown where they've done dope all the time. You know what I mean?
I just feel like if you went somewhere different when you came back to the United States, you might have saved some years of your life, or you think you needed that?
I just wasn't done yet. And I fully think in recovery, like, you're not done until you're done.
And in some cases, that's death.
In some cases, that's death. Jails, institutions are death.
Or seeing the other side, like you've been able to. So what's your life like now since getting clean? What do you do now?
Shoot, man. So
and what happened to your daughter's mother?
Yeah. So went up in Toledo. Toledo's so you heard the term Rust Belt?
Yeah.
Right? Like
it's a Rust Belt state, right?
Ohio's a Rust Belt state. Toledo's the true embodiment of like a Rust town city. Smaller town, small city, somewhat bigger town. And I ended up going to treatment, ended up going to like a Medicaid ran place. So by no means it wasn't fancy at all. A lot of people were in there like ducking sentences, you know what I mean? Because like the criminal justice system is so much more different than it was like when I was a juvenile and even in my early 10s. Like now they got like treatment in lieu. So like
drug courts and
stuff. So you get a lot of guys just ducking out of there. But I just took it super serious. I was like, this is the last house on the block. And like whatever they need to do. And it was really weird. I started having like a spiritual experience. Like I was like, and especially because I was homeless. But I remember I took that first shower and I was like, this is great. Man, and like my hands were all like black and had like these, like if you don't wash and take showers and you're constantly using your hands get these crazy calluses. I don't know how to explain. Like,
I'm sure your fingernails too.
Yeah, man. And like, I remember like washing myself off and like, they didn't have the best food, but they had some food. And I was like, this is great, man. And I just started taking it really serious, man. And I was just going to go for their 30-day program. I was like, all right, well, I'll go back home to Columbus and like figure something out. Maybe I'll, you know what I mean? And then they're like, so we have like a transitional housing you could go to. I'm like, no, I'm going to go to Columbus or whatever. And they're like, you can make your own decisions, but I think you shouldn't and stay here. So I went to the residential housing and I started taking it real serious. And I got involved in the 12-step program. I won't say you're mentioning it. Probably figure it out if you listen to me long enough. And like I always tell people, there's different ways of recovering. You know what I mean? Like, church, sports, family. Like I found my way through a 12-step program. And I just immediately started diving deep into that. And like in the residential, I had to go like do some groups through their like facility, like, a few times a week. And then I just started taking it real serious. And it was crazy, right? So I was able to get a job and I had a warrant, like a misdemeanor warrant, nothing crazy. I didn't have an ID, didn't have a social security card. I had $0, right? And I'm in this place like trying to get my life back together. My driver's license is has been suspended since like I got kicked out of the National Guard. Haven't had a driver's license. But, I started writing down goals. You know what I mean? Like, what's the saying? You know how you eat an elephant? one bite at a time, starting with its ass. You know what I mean? I just made that last part up. But
that was a good addition.
But I just started taking them down. And, I started making money. I started making breakfast sandwiches and like selling them around the transitional house before everyone went to group, like $5. You know what I mean? So I started stacking a little bit of money with that and got the warrant lifted. And then I went and got my fucking driver's license back, and once again, things have changed. They got like programs now where you could like pay money into like a payment program and amnesty programs to help people get their license back. Got my fucking driver's license back, buddy. And then I was like, I could go get a real job finally. And, it's hard because of where I was at. And I went to Jimmy John's, right? And I was like, fuck, man, I've been through all this, had all this, did all this. And I'm a 30-something-year-old man going to work with some teenagers at Jimmy John's. And I just have to fucking walk in, right? Like I've had stuff, I've had cars, and I'm walking to a sub shop to work with teenagers in my 30s. And like, I remember being real grumpy about it. Be like walking down the street like a smug look. I'm like, God damn it, this sucks. And I was like, I got to get grateful for this. And like, I just started looking at my goals and what I could do. And my attitude just started changing. I used to love, and then I started loving my walks to work. Like I felt free again. And like I don't judge anybody that like takes medications like after they get clean, but I decided like, no assisted medications. I was like, I'm going to eat healthy. I'm going to exercise and I'm going to like try a 12-step program. And if I don't start feeling better, then maybe I'll consider like taking outside medication. And like my brain's coming back and the spring started happening and like, the birds are chirping. And then I found myself one day, you're going to laugh, dude. I was like cleaning the bathrooms of a fucking Jimmy John's at 30-something years old after being what I've been through. And like, I'm like, damn, I'm so grateful. And they made me manager, right? Manager of Jimmy John's, woohoo. But like it started being like I started using that money, start paying back my license. Like you got to start small, bro. You can't like, live everything I've lived and then start the Ian Bick podcast. You got to start somewhere. What am I do without a driver's license? So like started looking at my small little goals. Like I'm staying clean, got involved in the 12-step programs, finished that IOP thing. And I started taking that serious. And before you know it, there's this rich guy. And this is why you don't ever get down on yourself, man. Can I like talk about programs or whatever? Yeah. So there's this organization in Toledo, Ohio. It's called Team Recovery, right? They're real big. It was started by this guy named Matt Bell or whatever. And they actually started the fuck heroin shirts. I know you've probably seen those.
Someone wore it on the show, I think.
So he started like the original that like way back in the day, right? And he'd been to treatment like 60 times, been arrested, homeless junkie just like me. And this guy ended up he owns a treatment center and like a bunch of like recovering houses. He's doing really well for himself, right? And he ended up giving me a job like as to landscape all his properties. And like at 6 months clean, this guy gave me a keys to a truck and a company credit card, and he paid me pretty decent. Like for what? You know what I mean? That's just because I kept going and like, God damn it, I had a lot of opportunity where I could have like embezzled some money off the gas card or took that truck somewhere else and or like take a side job and but like I was like, if I'm gonna do this all the way, like there's no like half in, half out. Like if I'm going to get clean, that means like I'm done like with the running rackets, trying to make money, the lying, the stealing, the cheating. Like if I'm going to do this, I'm going to do this all the way. I'm going to keep it pure. And, goddamn, like me doing the right thing. I used to ride a bike like 5 miles, like round trip, 2 there, 2.5 back or some shit. And he's like, damn, you ride like a bike here every day? I'm like, yeah, I'm motivated, bro. And he's like, just take the truck. So this motherfucker like gave me a truck within reason. I could drive around and, eventually I got my first house. Now, when all this is going on, I'm like, I need to rekindle this relationship with my mother's daughter, right? Even if she doesn't like me, hate me, I at least need to like apologize for the chaos I've created and tell her like, even if you don't want me in my daughter's life, like whatever I got to do, even if it takes more time, like I would have at least like to semi be there for my daughter. So me and her start talking again. I finally get my first fucking house in Toledo, like outside of recovery. And like at this point, like no one's drug tested me or anything. Like I remember the first day I rented this like sublet house type thing. And I remember the first night I was there outside of treatment or the transitional house, I was like, I'd get high right now and no one would know. You know what I mean? But the thing is I would know, and a good thing, like I was so involved in like this 12-step group and fucking then they call it cleaning up your past, right? Like if you picture a truck barreling down like a dust highway, right? Even after the truck stops, it takes a while for the dust to settle. So during COVID, I had gotten pulled over with some shit, and the court systems were so backed up that they weren't like prosecuting right away. So here I am almost like 9 months sober, and a future indictment comes back. So like I've changed my life, everything, and I barely knew about it. And I'm literally driving to get coffee one morning in Toledo, Saturday morning. I'm like, man, it's so good to just Springs here. I just feel fucking great. And a cop gets behind me, and I'm like, oh man, I must have and I did. I California stopped a red light or something. I'm like, oh man, I got a license, I got insurance, I was paid a ticket, no worries. And they end up pulling me up out of the car and arrested me, and so now I'm in county, and like I've left out a lot of county jail stints I did after juvenile, but like I'm like, fuck, I'm in county jail up in Toledo, Ohio, and I sit up there, and these motherfuckers from Franklin County drive all the way up and like pack me up, take me, and like I'm 9 months clean.
Yeah.
And I'm just like, man, this fucking sucks, bro. I've done everything right, and here I am. But you know, it all worked out. I spent a few days down there, ended up getting released. Me and the daughter's mother, we ended up getting back together. We're still together today. I'm married to her now.
So that's your current
the girl
wife.
from the boat.
That's so cool.
And this crazy girl, she ended up moving to Toledo with me, you know? So it's like me and her, and we get a house, and I just keep plugging away at the recovery thing, working for Guy. And then, you know, I was a little fed up. I was like, I think now's a good time we leave Ohio. Because like there's the relocation thing. Like if you're fucking up and you go somewhere else and you're just going to live the same exact way you were living, like you're just bringing yourself with you. But I was like, this time, like I've been working on myself. I want to go start a future. Plus I lived in the tropics for a while, and I got used to like the ocean and fucking palm trees, and not this shit out here in Connecticut, right? No offense, man. I was like, yeah, let's go move near the water, man. So that's when we moved down to Central Florida, and here we are. And like a lot of things that helps keep me sober is like I'm super involved, right? So in the 12-step program I'm in, there's something we call H&I. It's hospitals and institutions. So like we go into like hospitals and institutions, and we take like a recovery meeting in there, right? And like, you know, I work with guys. I have like an older guy that I work with. I work with guys that are like coming in fresh off the street, and then we go into this place. It's ran by the Florida Department of Corrections. It's like a work release. And like, so these guys are coming down off stretches, and then they're in their last 6 months, but now they could like go out and get a job and like come back and forth. So like every Saturday, like we go in there, me and a few guys, and we run this through there. And like these guys, and like I always take like a bunch of little Debbies and shit in there, and they really dig it. And like they're always like, man, you know, we really appreciate you guys coming in, man. We, you know, it's helping us out. We appreciate it. And little they know, like they're helping me. Bro, they're helping me a lot more than I think I'm helping them. And a lot of times, like, just hearing where they're at, because I've, like, been in similar situations. And, like, sometimes my mind strays. I'm like, you know, maybe the money's not coming too well. Like, let's run this racket or do this or do that. It's like something skirting the skirts of being illegal to, like, make some money, right? And then I'll hear some of their stories. Like, I won't say his name for him, you know, personal reasons. But, you know, he was in there. He was an older dude. He just got done doing 15 years for selling the equivalent of like $3,300 of Oxy back in the day.
Crazy.
So I've run the math on that, bro. Like, what the fuck is that? Like over $3,300? You know, that's when they're really clamping down. And there's like another, like a big trend in Florida. A lot of these guys are out of towners that show up and commit a crime and end up staying. Like we had a guy from, I won't say his name, but he was from a different state. He came down, thought he was going to take like some blowback on a fucking airplane, got stuck at the airport, ended up staying in Florida for 3 years. Got another guy from, once again, I won't say where he's from, but he went down to Miami, thought he was going to drive back to where he was from when he got caught. Another guy that got like way too drunk and got in a big physical altercation, ended up spending for it. Like a lot of these guys are just coming down there on a trip real quick, thinking they're going back home, and they end up spending, you know, years in Florida. But all things aside, we take it in there and just try to, you know, and like we stick on their recovery, and we just try to give them some hope, right? Like if you stick and do the right thing, you know, things are possible. And then we go into a treatment center on Thursdays. And that really helps me. Like we formed a group in there. We go in there, we talk to the guys, we let the guys talk, especially in the jail, right? Because a lot of those guys, or the work release, like they can't like get real intimate like on their unit for obvious reasons, right? So like it's cool they could come in this like small little group we run with all the doors shut, and they could actually talk about their feelings and shit. I mean, you can't do that for, you know what I mean? You can't get all emotional, but a bunch of guys, it could be a target or bullet, you know what I mean? You know what it is. It's like having these guys like get intimate and like hearing their fears. And then we go into the treatment center, and we work with these guys, and like, you you know, they like, so when I first got clean, you hear these guys like, they'd be like, yeah, I got like 25 years clean. That don't even make sense to me because like I can't even envision 25 years in my head, let alone 25 years of not doing dope, right? And I remember there's this guy, I forget his fucking name now, but he got like 6 months. He like got this 6 months coin or whatever. And I'm like that sounds attainable. You know what I mean? I was like, I got 30 days. I'm like, I think I could do 6 months. So like, I remember I just kept thinking 6 months, and I finally made it to 6 months. So like, even me just going in with 3 years, some of these guys just coming fresh off the street, like they could look at me and be like, you know, that sounds pretty attainable. What's 3 years? It really helps me. And then anytime I like, you know, my brain's still straight. So like maybe, you know, maybe smoke some, hit something. But then like I look at them and I'll be like, that's where it's going to take me. You know, every fucking time. Because like I've proven to myself time and time again, I can't just be California sober like I just taught you. You know what I mean? So California sober when you smoke and don't do hard drugs anymore. Not that I knock it, because like I said, a lot of people come off the hard drugs and then just smoke weed, which obviously is damage control. That's a lot better. But then there's like Las Vegas sober. It's like I don't do hard drugs, I just smoke meth. Or Miami sober, I don't do hard drugs, I just snort blow. So like where's the line drawn here, right? So it's just best where I stay off it. And then me and those same 3 group of guys, we're starting to go. Where actually I got to go do the train. Actually on Monday I got to go get fingerprinted, and then we got to start the training. We're going into the Central Florida Reception Center. So now we're actually going into the prison to like run a recovery meeting on Sundays.
That's awesome.
So like we all hang out or whatever, and then you know, so we're chilling, man. And then my partner, so we're married. We have a son now. She has like a following on TikTok. You know what I mean? She's like so my daughter has autism, and like she's like an autistic, like autism mom, like that's her niche genre, whatever. She does real well with it. And then she is in this program where we create like UGC ads for like social media, for like apps and
I've
shit.
heard of that.
So like we do that, and then I work for during the busy season I work for like a fucking kayak company. So like I take people out to show them like manatees and dolphins. You ever seen the glowing blue water? The dino flash, the bioluminescent water? So like you paddle in the water and it all illuminates from these organisms in there.
That's so cool.
And just staying clean, man. And you know, honestly, I wanted to get more involved in like social media and stuff, but like I'm kind of like naturally a shy guy.
Well, this is a great first step into it.
Yeah, that's why I was like, you know, just putting the apple on the cake for me there.
Yeah, well, and to think you were worried, man, you've been rolling. You've been rocking and rolling. You did really well.
Yeah, thank you. I'm sorry if I strayed off there, bro.
No, you did good. Sometimes, because my style is letting the person talk. So you'll share stories thinking that you're rambling, but it's a part of that period of time, you know? You're still going along the timeline. Now, if you were talking about like your childhood, then that would be rambling. If we were, you know, talking about your time in New Zealand or something, you know, if the pieces are mixed up. What do you think is the biggest lesson you want to get off to people today from hearing your story?
I mean, like, it comes back to like when I was younger and like making it through the juvenile system, right? You know, hey, don't hang out with them people. Don't do them drugs because your life will end up like this, right? Like if you're anything like me, like that's gonna roll right over your head. You can't. Yeah, you know what I mean? If you're hard-headed, you're going to do it. If I'm hard-headed, I'm going to do it. I don't care what you're saying. So I can sit here and be like, don't do hard drugs. You know, stay away from them people. But at the end of the day, if they're on drugs or if they want to hang out with people, they're going to fucking do it where they go. So, I mean, one thing, the piece way that there's hope. You know what I mean? Like, and hope from a lot of, like, you know, we could go way out on this, but at least from my stuff from recovery. So, like, there's hope, dude. I've seen the guy with Team Recovery. You know, I mean, I'm not going to put his pocketbook out there, but I'm sure he's doing well financially. He, you know, has been in multiple rehabs. He used to live on the street, junkie, arrested. I've seen, you know, 50-year-olds that destroyed their whole life with crack cocaine go and get educations, PhDs and master's degrees. I've seen people start businesses and get their kids back and change their life around. So if you get anything out of it, like no matter how far, and I haven't even been, like I said it from the beginning, I'm not an ecstasy kingpin. I'm not 1090 Jake's fucking prison warrior. Like I'm just like a humble dude. But like there's people a lot lower than me that have been a lot lower than me that have found their way out too. So
but I mean, that's what makes it relatable. You know, yeah, it's relatable to the average person that's been in your shoes because there's a lot of you. Yeah. So don't decredit yourself for that. You know. Well,
I was real intimidated because you've had some like heavy in this seat right here, right?
Yeah, but you know. Sometimes the audience doesn't like the heavy hitters as much though too, because that's not relatable, you know, but it's interesting to people, but relatable, not as much, you know, it's more people want the not so famous on social media, average, everyday people sharing their story, which is what you did today. And you did a great job doing it.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Don't tear me up in the comments too much, please.
I don't think you gave people a reason to. Now, if you came here and said you were an ecstasy kingpin, that would be a little bit different.
I won't go there. I read those comments out, bro.
Well, you get that across on a lot of people's stories. That comes with it. But you need the negative comments to fuel the engagement.
Yeah, of course.
To get the views too. So, But Chris, thanks so much for coming today, man.
Thank you, Ian.
It was a pleasure to speak to you today. And, best of luck with everything. And have fun in the city with your family.
Thanks, buddy.